The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
This may sound like a typical high school basketball game being played on a Friday night in South Dakota. In fact, it's a crash course in cooperation and teamwork. It's a test of dedication, determination, and drive. It's character development in action. If you think high school sports are only about competition, think about this. High school sports can play a critical role in a student's overall education. In fact, studies show that students who participate in school sports are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in their academic lives. At the same time, playing sports helps teach lessons not covered in the classroom. Lessons like tolerance, respect for the rules, and the importance of supporting your community. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. There's just one place where students are students first, and athletics are played with purpose and perspective. That place is your local high school. High school sports offer more than the joy of competition. Studies show that student athletes in South Dakota are also likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in other areas of their lives, including academics. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in South Dakota. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
These days, the concept of value matters more than ever. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a better value than high school sports. Extracurricular activities, including sports, make up about 2% of the budget for a typical South Dakota high school. In return, participation in sports promotes citizenship and sportsmanship. Sports also instill a sense of community pride and teach lifelong lessons about cooperation and self-discipline. They encourage physical fitness. They produce community leaders. By offering so many benefits to the community for such a small percentage of a school's overall budget, it's easy to see why high school sports are one of the best bargains around. The real cost would come from not having them at all. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
What do basketball, choir, drama club, and marching band all have in common? They're all high school activities that offer learning opportunities not necessarily found in the classroom. They take up just a fraction of a typical South Dakota high school's budget, and they go a long way to giving young people the tools they need to thrive. High school activities, they're more than extracurricular. They're extra important, too. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
It may not require a textbook, but it's filled with valuable lessons. It may not take place in a classroom, but it's an ideal environment for learning. It may not involve a diploma, but it can help prepare South Dakota's young people for life. It's high school sports. High school sports can play a critical role in a student's overall education. In fact, studies show that students that participate in high school sports are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in their academic lives. If you think high school sports are only about competition, think again. Better yet, think about attending a high school sporting event in your community. You'll be amazed by what you see. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
Let's talk about the X's and O's of family entertainment. Every parent in South Dakota knows the importance of being able to draw up an activity that'll get you out of the house for a couple of hours. But it needs to be affordable. It needs to be family-friendly. Above all, it needs to be fun. Now, let's talk about high school sports. Bang for your buck, school sports provide the perfect game plan for your family. You'll enjoy all of the drama and excitement competitive sports offer. You'll be supporting the future leaders of our community in a meaningful way. Best of all, you can take the entire family without breaking the bank. Heck, you won't even dent it. Now, enough chalk talk. Let's get out there and see what's playing at the high school in your community. School sports. Good for our kids, good for our community. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
I perform for our high school choir director, who taught me to breathe from the diaphragm and sing from the heart.
Speech, debate, theater, music, the performing arts teach valuable life lessons that typically aren't taught in the classroom. They help high school students learn leadership skills that prepare them to enjoy more satisfying, productive lives.
Hey, I've got a question for you. Who will you perform for?
This message presented by South Dakota High School Activities and the high school in your community. There's just one place where students are students first, and athletics are played with purpose and perspective. There's just one place where a team is more than a group of individual agendas. It's a catalyst for demonstrating the potential of the collaborative spirit. There's just one place where players, coaches, and fans experience the exhilaration that happens when an entire community rallies behind the school team. That place is your local high school. High school sports offer more than the joy of competition. Studies show that student athletes are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in other areas of their lives, including academics. In addition, high school sports help young people in South Dakota develop the discipline and confidence they need to be leaders in life, even as they unite communities like nothing else. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
Who do I play for? I play.
This return just seems too fast.
All right, welcome everyone. We got to. We're going to call to order the June 11th meeting. Before we do that, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, once again, welcome to our June meeting. For those of you listening, prior to this, we had a presentation for the outgoing board members, Dr. Maher, Dr. Brian Maher, David Plantine, and myself, Mo Rusing, just a short time ago. And thank you for everybody for that presentation and the star quilts and the other different insignias and plaques, so forth. Very appreciative of all that. So we'll start with item number 1, approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by David. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, agenda has been passed. Item number 2 is public forum.
1 second. Just for the public, just to note, we've got 8 of our board members here, and Randy Soma, our 9th board member, is participating via Zoom.
Thank you.
Yep. So I remind the board members, just because a lot of this is over audio, and we don't have a video going with our Zoom meeting, to please state your name before you start speaking or before you make a motion, so that the people listening know who's who when we're talking.
Okay. Item number 2 is the public forum. Is there anyone wishing to address the board at this time? I believe we do have one person that is signed up.
Mike Schmidt. Yep.
Mike Schmidt from Summit. And I believe he is on Zoom up there for us. So, Mike, if you can hear me, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Bruce Inc. I'm Mike Schmidt. I'm from the Summit School District, and I guess I want to just address the board about the possible change to 20%, change from the 10% rule of football to the 20% rule. I know football, anytime you change anything, there's new winners and new losers, so there's always someone that things would change for. I guess the rationale I've been given with the change to 20% is that people say it's not fair. You have 3 studs from one town come in and 30% of that enrollment. I'm just going to give you a kind of our perspective from our school, as it would affect us. It would cause us to go from 9-man to 11-man. We're a 3-school co-op with Vermont and La Bay and us. And it would, one of our schools has an 80-yard field, so it would be a cost to change that field and possibly, very likely, would eliminate us as a co-op and make it difficult for us to field teams in Wabae, Summit, and Wilmot. So just as our example, where this year we had one school that had 4 kids out, and all 4 kids were sophomores and freshmen. And so we counted 40% of that enrollment, and none of them really played. One of the sophomores played a little bit in varsity games. So it helped us keep our program. It helps us run our JV level. It helps us stay competitive. So we're seeing that it could really hurt some schools like us that are getting sophomores and freshmen out now to keep them out. Then I guess as far as that goes, the rationale of not being fair, it doesn't make sense. I don't feel that's a very good rationale. There's schools right now that are given religious exemptions and not having to count the full population of students. And so they're allowed to take that exemption and compete in a class where they can be successful. Where this 10% rule, I feel it allows us that same opportunity. And I guess that's my pitch. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. And I guess if you have questions, go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions?
On the chat had indicated. Okay. No one else had indicated beforehand that they'd like to speak.
Any questions from the board for Mike? All right. Thank you again, Mike. Appreciate it. And I don't believe we have any other Anybody wishing to address the board at this time? So we'll move on to item number 3. Approval of minutes from the regular meeting held April 21st and the special meeting held May 28th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Rasmussen, approve.
Murphy, second.
Motion by Jerry, second by Mark. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, item 3 has been passed. Moving on to item number 4, approval of the financial reports as submitted. Go ahead, Isaac.
Okay, so we'll look at 2 months worth of income statements. I'll let them load here so we can. There's just a couple of things I wanted to point out, just so we are on the same page. I just loaded it up. There it goes. You can disregard those notes on the side. That's just because I highlighted things. So girls B basketball, we ended up with $3,808. Just wanted to point that out. That's just all the money that they did a great job working through those manifests and those tickets. I know they were dealing with a lot with refunds and things. That's all the money we collected back from Spearfish from the site. So, and then wrestling came in May for $228, which I think was pretty comparable to what we had budgeted. The only other thing I'll point out is in April, just to highlight a new line item, that 4611, is that PPP loan that we received, and with new guidance that came out. I think, I think we were 100%, we were pretty positive we weren't going to have to pay that back anyway. It's going to be a forgivable loan, and especially now with the new guidance, we're sitting pretty. So to point out below in the employee benefits, the 5,200, and really you'd only know this if you look at the statements every month. Those amounts look like they're doubled, and that's just because I wrote those checks. You'll see there's no expense for those in April, and then it's doubled in May. It was just the timing of when the checks were written for payroll, so that ends up washing out. Scroll to the bottom, I don't think. And that's really all we had for April and May that I wanted to point out for income. On the balance sheet, we can scroll through the April balance sheet and look at the May balance sheet. And Brad will review our bank balances too, but Bank West checking, what we've got net of outstanding is sitting in there $2,500, which is right about where we want to be. We've got a good amount set in our Dakota Bank, but that's going to keep us going for a while. And then we've got our investments accounts, which Brad will touch on. The reason the accounts receivable are so high, we just had, we book all of those receivables for our corporates at the beginning of the year. So some of those that are due here at the end of the year, those are sitting in our accounts receivable, and everything else would be no change from month to month. So if we look at our cash flow chart, you can just kind of see, if you look April and May of last year, if you zoom in, you can just see how those revenues change. And again, it kind of just all depends on when we receive that money in. And these numbers are taken directly off the bank statements. So again, we're comfortable with where we're at. And we'll review kind of our year end here as we go. But that's all. Any questions for me? Okay, and we've got Brad with the investments. That's your new sheet, and I didn't delete your old sheet. So after that, you can skip it.
You did not delete the old sheet?
No, you can skip it if you prefer.
So I asked Isaac to load this in just to give a little feel of the volatility that we've seen in this market. And Mark and I were talking before the meeting started. We're going the other direction, so I don't know how relevant this is as of today, but this report is as of yesterday's close, and you'll see that the total value of the corporate contributed to funds was about 1.085. And if you scroll to the next screen up, this is the one I did a week ago, 1.062. So we're up almost $23,000 in a week. And that's how crazy this market has been. We can move 2 or 3 percentage points in a week. And as of late, it's been fairly positive. You can see that it's indicative of the chart on the upper right-hand corner, the line graph. Just keep in mind that goes from the peak there at Q4, that's the end of 2019. The bottom of the check mark there is March 31st of 2020, and then where we sit today as of June 2nd, a week ago. And it looks like there that we're down a fair amount, but keep in mind we drew $100,000 out of this portfolio and slid it over into the operating account in January. So that's reflected in part of that downturn, because that just shows total balance of the account. From a percentage standpoint, I think it's really interesting. We go to the portfolio return in the upper left-hand corner. You'll see that at the beginning of the year, we're about 1.2 million. We sit at 1.062, probably closer to 1.1 today. We're down about 1 to 2% year to date. Had I told you that on March 30th, that that's where we'd be, you looked at me and thought I was crazy, just like when I told you on January 1st that, you know, we're going to hit under $1 million at some point this year. That's how crazily volatile this market has been. What's really important to me, though, is the far right column in that portfolio return. This goes back to 2003. This is as far back as we can go on this data. We've actually worked with the association longer than that. But that's the number that we track all the time. Our trailing annual rate of return is 6.71% per year since 2003. Put that in perspective, if you look at the numbers above that in the column, you'll see the net contribution, 515, 618. That includes all money that's come in minus any money that we've spent out of these accounts. The next number underneath that is the total return. So we've more than doubled the money that's come in here over the course of that time frame. And that's what's really important to us. We don't really get that excited about the zigs and zags in the short term. Put a little asterisk, other than what I saw this spring. It made me a little nervous, I'm not going to lie to you. When you're watching markets move 3,000 and 4,000 points in a day, that's not normal. But I'm very comfortable with where we're at. We did a couple of changes, and we talked about this in the last meeting. We've reduced our international exposure a little bit. We're going to continue to reduce that international exposure with the next go-around at the beginning of Q3 when we do our rebalances again. You'll notice if you start adding up the positions in the lower right-hand corner underneath the pie graph, we're a little heavy in equities right now. That's because since we did the rebalance in April, it's been nothing but straight up on the market, right? So we'll capture some of those profits around the end of this month, first part of next month. And when we do that, we're also going to reallocate and shrink that international position a little bit. Again, this is where we get our crystal ball out, which is some days really cloudy and some days a little less cloudy, never crystal clear. But our gut feeling from what we're reading and the people we're talking to is that the U.S. market has a better chance of recovering than some of the more established international markets. And we just feel we're going to take some of the volatility out of the portfolio by shrinking a piece of that. So we're not going to get crazy. We're not going to say, hey, we're going to zero international. But instead of being 20%, you'll probably see this lower than 20% the next go around, depending on how things work. So one other quick thing to note, our Franklin Square investment that we have, and that's a little hard to read under the account performance because it's split out into two different pieces because of how we've had to allocate it into the account. The overall return has been decent on that. They're going public in about a week. So there'll be some changes to what we recommend. Once we see that investment go public, we may liquidate it and do something different. We like the private side of what they did before, but we'll have to see how they trade in the public market. But the dividend has been fantastic. It's pushing 15% right now, so it's kind of hard to replace too. So we're going to watch that. There will be some potential changes on that as well. Any questions on this? Okay. If we flip up to the next couple screens here, we should get into, so here's where we sit, and Isaac touched on this. You'll see as of last week, the total operating funds just over $500,000. So well capitalized there to get us through the summertime. And then I keep that on there just to keep in mind that, we have loaned some money from the corporate contributed funds over to the operating account to about $300,000. And since we've kind of tried to stay around that $1.4 million in those corporate contributed funds, I think it's important to remember that balance is still out there. So our implied value to the corporate contributed funds sits at 1.36, which is kind of right where we want to be. It's been an interesting year to this point. Kind of give you our feelings, and Mark and I talked a little bit about this before the meeting started. It's been a very interesting year, to say the least, and I know all of you understand that with. I still remember when Wayne Carney and I sat down and started talking about this corporate contributed funds. we were always worried about, hey, we might lose a state basketball tournament someday because of weather. Nobody ever anticipated what we went through this year, right? And so it's really important that we've put these dollars aside, and we've been able to ride through this fairly well. And I commend the board and the folks here in the office for the hard work that you've done to be able to ride through this, because you experienced what a lot of other businesses did. We just went to zero revenue on a lot of our income streams, and how do we fix that? Well, we're figuring out that we can get through some of these things, and that's pretty cool to have that on your resume as an organization, to know that you can guide through something like this. Kind of our feed, because of the coronavirus side of things, I think you're looking at 5 days to get back to normal. And what do I mean by that? By normal, I mean no consideration to go jump on an airplane. No thought about going to a high school basketball or high school football game and who's sitting next to you. No concern about going to church or going to Disney World. Or I think we've got a psychological change that's happened, and we may never get back. The new normal may be different, right? And I think there's a lot of analogies between what happened post 9/11. You think of air travel and how that changed. And I remember when the first time I had to go through a TSA checkpoint, and I thought, nobody's ever going to fly again. This is crazy, right? We figured it out. We moved forward. So I think we're in really good shape in terms of our understanding of the health aspect. I think we're a lot more comfortable today than we were 3 months ago in terms of what we need to do to mitigate the health risk. The backside of this is what concerns me a little bit, and that's the economics of this. Nobody has ever built an economic model that says, hey, let's throw 50 million people on unemployment and see what happens, okay? So we've got to figure out a way as a country and as an economy, how do we get those people re-engaged back into the economy? And there's a couple of chances. They're disincentivized to jump back into the system, okay? That will end the end of June or July. Some of those bonuses will end, and so hopefully that'll incentivize people to get back. But I think we also have to be sensitive to the fact that there's still employees on the sideline out there that aren't comfortable from the health aspect to get back. That's the psychological hurdle that we've got to cover, and we've got to, as employers, and we've got to figure out how to deal with that. And then the other side of this is, are the consumers going to be willing to come back and utilize the goods and services at the same level or more than they were pre-pandemic? And those are the things that we still have to figure out, and that's why I think it's going to take some time. It's great that the market has popped back up like this. I think it's a bit of a misnomer as to where we really are in the economy right now. I think it's a little bit of an optimistic hope, if you will. Market's always forward-looking, but I think they've maybe gotten a little bit ahead of themselves. But we're going to continue to manage things like we have. Our system helps mitigate some of those deals because we're taking profits when the market does look a little bit too high and sliding in conservative, and vice versa. When the market decides to step back, then we're ready to step back in. So, any questions on that? Great. It's awesome to get to be here in public and get to see people face to face. For those of you on Zoom, sorry, I'm sick of Zoom meetings. I'm sure all of you are too. But really appreciate the opportunity. If anything comes up, as always, just give me a call. All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I do need a motion and a second to approve the financial reports.
So moved to approve it.
Motion by Dan. Second.
I'll second.
Castles. Second by Craig. Any further discussion on what was presented to us?
I want to make a quick note. This is Isaac's last meeting with us. He's not in here right now, but I do want to thank Isaac for his time here at the association, and he streamlined our financial processes quite a bit, and we wish him nothing but the best, and thank him for his time.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I think I heard Randy. Opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Item number 5, consent agenda. Is there anything that
Maher moved to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Brian.
Second, Soma.
Second by Randy.
You're welcome.
Disappointed you don't have the suit on.
Yeah, the only question I have is how come I was told I couldn't come?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. At the risk of making Brian itch, I do want to read our Distinguished Service Award nominees. And in the future, we'll just pull these out and do them separately because they deserve having their names read. So the nominees for Distinguished Service Awards, which will be handed out next year, would be Dr. Maher from Sioux Falls, Bo Rusink from Sioux Valley, James Farrell from Flanders Indian School, Jack Rasmussen of Salem, Mike Ring of Highmore. Our coaches and directors would be Jill Christensen, Parker, Anita Beck, Arlington, Brian Staley, Mitchell. Our Board of Education is David Plantine of Langford. Our contributors, Jane Kramer from Rapid City. She runs the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center out there and has done a lot with us. And then our officials would be Larry Osborne from Rapid City, Mark Marshall from White River, and Randy Stanton from Rapid City. So I did want to congratulate them.
All right, I'm going to just finish that. Was there anybody opposed? If so, same sign. You're good. All right, consent agenda is passed. Isaac stepped out for just a moment. We want to recognize you and thank you as a board for everything. This is his last meeting, so we appreciate everything that you've done to get our finances to look the way they look, and just all your work that you've done to get us where we're at. So thank you.
Dr. Swarto said that he helped streamline our accounting measures in the last several years. That might be the largest understatement I've ever heard.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 6, staff reports. Advisory meetings. Brooks, just looking for you over here.
Yeah, I moved today. The only advisory meeting we had was media advisory. We met over Zoom. It was a pretty short meeting and no proposals came out of that meeting. We had a couple discussions about making programs available for the media at the media entrance when they come in. And then we also talked about people kind of abusing our state passes, especially at wrestling, where mom and dad are borrowing it from the local newspaper just so they can be down on the match there. And so we're going to work on ways that we can better enforce the use of our passes at those state events. But yeah, nothing big came out of that meeting.
All right, thank you, Dr. Swartos, Finance.
Yeah, we'll visit about our Finance Committee meeting or the recommendations that came out of Finance Committee later on here. I just wanted to note that we did have our meeting. It was later this year than it normally was for a number of reasons. Most of all, it was us as a staff really trying to get our head around what our end of this year budget was going to look like and start looking at next year's budget. And there was a lot of unknowns there. So I want to thank them. That involves Mo and David from our board are on that committee. And then we've got Mark Noggle and Jeff Danielson as our superintendents. We've got Adam Shaw from Madison as our principal. Our athletic directors are Paul Napadal and Chuck Wilson. And then we also have Darla Mayer, the business manager from Pierre, on that committee. So I really appreciate them serving on that and them taking the time to meet with us the other day. And we'll go through their recommendations later on.
All right, moving on to B, 2019-20 goals update. Dr. Swartos.
Yeah, I forgot to get that attached to there. I can send that updated one to the board here later. In terms of our goals this year, goal 1 is to simplify and articulate our mission, vision, and belief statements. We're still working through that. We hope to have something ready for the board to look at in August at our strategic planning meeting. The second one, again, would be to study and make recommendations and changes to the management fees and new revenue, including a bid process for state events, set fees for sub-state contests, and new revenue streams. Our goal for that is, again, August. We've been making progress on that. We likely won't have a state event bid model this year for the board to look at, but we are working on standardized sub-state expenses, and August of this year is when we will make recommendations on any changes to the management fees to our schools. Our third goal is to develop an RFP for merchandise sales. That will be completed this month. We've gone through that bid process. The board will consider those bids, and then that works into the prior goal in that the funding from that would go into increasing those management fees to our host schools. So a portion of that will be completed today. The back half of that goes into making recommendations to management fees and hopefully increasing those reimbursements to our site hosts. Goal 4 was to explore new sports and activities for our association. That's ongoing. And likely will remain ongoing. We were set to visit with the superintendents this summer regarding softball and esports, and that convention was canceled. So we will likely move that forward into next year as a goal, or that be a recommendation, so that we get a chance throughout the year to meet with the superintendents again and gauge their interest. One item that we did get moved forward, and that would get finalized today, would be the addition of the Division of Girls Wrestling. I think that will provide opportunities for a lot more kids than we think in South Dakota. Every sport around us that's implemented that has really seen that sport explode. So, I mean, we're excited about that as a staff. I think it's going to be exciting for a lot of girls in our state who have grown up wrestling and have stopped doing it when they get to high school. So this gives them a way to move forward. So, and then our fifth goal was to revise the advisory committee structures. I know Brooks talked a bit about that at our last meeting with the music advisory, and I think that's a part of first reading here is changing some of the music advisory structures.
I would save that till August with the rest of our board.
Okay. Okay. But we will have those recommendations for those advisory committee structures to you in August. So, and that was more just standardizing our advisory committees, taking a look at them, make sure they're composed as they are directed to be in our per our Constitution and bylaws. And, just reviewing them. So, okay. I apologize that wasn't attached. But I can send it. I'll get an update sent to the board.
All right, moving on to C, foundation report. Do we have anything from the foundation?
We do not.
Okay, and then moving on to the superintendent's report.
We do not.
Nothing from the superintendents?
I've got one other item before we move on to John's thing here.
Okay.
This didn't get on here, but a number of you may have heard that there had been a lawsuit against the Connecticut Activities Association regarding the transgender policy. There was a ruling by the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education this last month, which found their policy to be in violation of Title IX. There's still a lot of fights going on in regards to what that actually means. But I wanted to let you know that we are reviewing that as a staff. We've sent it off to our attorney to get her perspective on what the actual ruling means, and whether it should be considered a ruling or not. It's written as a ruling, but at the end it says it shouldn't be considered a ruling. But a portion of that is they are looking at removing federal funds from the Connecticut Association and schools that belong to them. So I just wanted to give the board a heads up. That is something we're reviewing and looking at our policy, and likely will be a bigger discussion item at our August meeting.
And on the punitive side of that, the federal funding, you don't get federal funding.
We do not. We do not.
So the federal funding comes through the member schools?
Yes, but they're talking about to the schools that belong to them as well. But Connecticut does receive it because they do Unified Sports, which is a division of special education, and they receive some special education funding for putting on those sports.
They'd also written a grant, I think, that they were using as a federal funding mechanism to be able to pull that back from the CIAC.
We received that about a week and a half. Well, it came out a couple weeks ago, and every article we saw referred to this 45-page document, and I received that document about a week and a half ago, so we've been looking through it. And we've had preliminary talks with Lindsay about that, but we'll be in a much better position to talk about that in August.
All right, thank you. Moving on to E, Dr. Crowstrand, medals and trophies for basketball and spring sports update.
Just a heads up and just giving you guys an update as a board, but also so it's kind of on the record for the schools. We have both replacement medals and plaques as you authorized us from that last meeting that are now in production and on their way. The plaques for the teams that qualified in state basketball should be shipped either late this week or early next. Medals are on order, and now that production has ramped back up at the different facilities, we should have those. So the schools should be receiving all of that by about July 1 at the latest, if not a little bit sooner.
Those will go directly to the school.
They're all being directly shipped just right out to the school, so those will be there. For you, as far as the budgetary impact, part of that, if you recall, was that we took on the expense or bore the expense of all of the region awards for track and field and golf. It's usually split by those schools in the region. Totaling that all up ends up being about a $14,000 impact is what it is. We did also ship back all of the plaques and trophies for all of those winter sports, and he still had the spring sports in hand. So we will end up also getting a credit back and some of those being reused. The fun little aside on that is that a box of 4 state basketball plaques is currently sitting at a truck stop in Peoria, Illinois, because apparently FedEx could not tell the difference between Peoria, Illinois and Princeton, Illinois, threw it in the wrong box, and we're working through a little bit of claim on that. But if any of you are driving through Peoria in the next couple of days, let me know. We'll send you there to pick up some basketball trophies and bring it back for us. But just wanted to report that those should all be out to the schools and by the end of the month, hopefully, and that we did get all those ordered and awarded, and should be all completed by July 1, so it's not a mess budgetarily later on. So.
Also, on a side note, some of you have boxes sitting behind you with the state basketballs. There are, as you can see in the back of the room here, several basketballs yet from the state tournament that will be shipped out to each of the schools that were participants in the state basketball tournaments. They'll each be getting 2 basketballs as well as a signature ball for their trophy cases.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, our action items. Consider merchandise bids. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Craig. Second?
Second, Planting.
Second by David. I'll hand this over to Dr. Swartos, and if there's any discussion after that, go ahead.
Yeah. So we sent this out after our March meeting, I believe. No, it was April. After our April meeting, we had the RFP that was approved by the board. We sent this out. It was kind of terrible timing because it was during the coronavirus stuff, but we did get quite a bit of interest back. This was the one bid that we received back. It was from Fine Designs out of Des Moines, Iowa. They've worked at a couple of our events in the past. I believe they did state football Brookings this year, and they've also done gymnastics and some boys Class A golf stuff. They've done a good job for them. So our minimum ask was $60,000 guarantee. If that's not met, then it would be 35% of their revenue. What the guarantee here on this bid is $75,000 And then it's 35% of sales for each dollar over $35,000 of sales per year. Okay, so in addition to that, it is $7,500 in complimentary clothing to our association, and what our intention with that would be to some of our sites there, they buy pullovers or whatnot for the officials that are working there. They provide T-shirts for the workers who are working, table workers. So our intention is to use that to purchase some pullovers for our state officials, so the local hosts don't have to buy that. To help provide some worker T-shirts for our site hosts for that, and then it would be some additional clothing in-house for the board and for the staff. So that falls in line with what was on the proposal as well. So in looking through it and reviewing it, it is our recommendation to approve this, that $75,000. As we'll get through the budget here, as we get to our first reading of the budget here, you'll see that we're going to use, the intention with this money is to use that $75,000 or as close to it as possible towards host fees for our school. So, and I don't want to say that every single penny of that goes to us every year, because our budget fluctuates so much depending on where things are every year. But it's our intention to use as much of that as possible towards the increasing of host management fees to our state sites. So, and you'll see that in August with our proposal to increase those fees. And I hate that we call them fees, because it sounds like that's what we're charging the schools. When I say host management fees, that's what we pay to our sites for hosting the event to help them cover their costs.
Any further questions for Dr. Suarez?
You have a secondary bit of information here from the company, just going through some other events that they hold, letting you know sort of what it will look like. They do a lot with the NIAA championships. They work with the Wyoming Association. They work with the Mississippi Association. They work with the IS, or the Illinois Association. So they've been around for a long time. They're a reputable company, and meet some good specs. So our recommendation would be approval.
Hey, Bill, this is Randy. I got a couple of questions.
Go for it, Randy.
Not so much questions. I've worked with these guys in the past. They've done a really good job when we post them here in Brookings. They're very professional. They work through the state with all the logo stuff. They can offer numerous different ideas, and also equipment, hats, sweatshirts, pullovers, t-shirts, so not just t-shirts. And they do a really good job. I've been happy with everything they've done when we work with them. My only concern is that a lot of schools that are hosting use some of that money for scholarships and different things like that. Just wondering from Dan, will that, you said not all that money might not be spent, just making sure that we put as much dollars towards helping those schools that do host, and make sure that those extra things are being paid for, because I know that it's difficult to put things on and not get any benefit from it. And this is one of the benefits that some of those schools were having, was being able to take some of that money and then use it towards some of their stuff, whether that's scholarships back to the kids or whatever. So I think some of those schools might be looking for other sources for those scholarships. I also know that we have if we go to the $350,000, you get a percentage. Is that going to be earmarked for something, or is that for the same? Is all that dollars going to go towards helping run the state tournament?
Yes, and the reason I say I hesitate a little bit here is, like, you'll see on our budget right now that we'll propose to you here shortly. Without any additional money into our hosting fees, we have about a $65,000 excess. We're going to take that $65,000 and move it towards our management fees. And it's every year is sort of different depending on where events are held. So our intention is to put as much of that as possible into there, if that makes sense. So
that makes sense, Dan. I'm just making sure that since we're taking this away from some of the schools, and you know what, it is a lot of extra work on those managers, those state tournament managers, and I think they'll be fine with that. I do know that, like I said, the scholarships that we gave kids that will probably be taken away, but we can still work around that. And I think it is a very good idea, and I think it's one less thing that the state tournament managers have to deal with. So I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, when we collected data, I think it was last year, the total profit at all of our sites on t-shirt sales was around $12,000. It was somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000. And you know, our pitch, if you will, to the site hosts was we're turning down $75,000, $80,000 to make $12,000. And I think it's much more efficient to centralize it this way. It's less stuff for the host manager to worry about. And to us, our focus was on trying to get a significant amount of money to put into those hosting fees without raising ticket prices or some other method of doing that. So yeah, that's our intention. Is now we still have to look through this and see how we're going to spread this out amongst the events. You know, there's some that cost a lot more than others to the hosts. So, but that's our intention, is to take that money and to move it towards host fees and to give some of that back to them. So
I would recommend that money, the allocations for that money be looked at through the state tournament hosting committee that we have. Maybe they do that annually to kind of just shore it up and make sure that we're having a voice to those people that are running the tournaments.
Yep. Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, item number 7 has passed. Moving on to item number 8, approve fiscal year 19 audit. Over to Isaac, I believe.
Yeah.
Let me get a motion in a second first. Is there a motion to approve?
Passes.
Motion by Jerry.
Second, Akers.
Second by Dan. All right, Isaac, and then if there's any discussion after that, we'll go for it.
Sure. So I'll keep it simple, but we have no findings this year. It's a clean audit, and I'm proud of that. I'm happy about that. Everything went well. If you keep going a little bit down, John, this is last year's finding. If you remember, and let me back up, the audit that we're looking at is for the year ending June 30, 2019. So we just got this back, I think it's dated end of April. This was last year's findings, so which would have been the year ending June 30, 2018. And that was the year where we had moved the foundation off of our balance sheet. And the finding was we didn't categorize it as a, what do they call it as? Oh, just give me a sec. They called it a special item, so it should have been classified as a special item. We just didn't break it out and list it separately as a special item. That was the finding. And then our goal to resolve that was to just analyze at the end of each year, you know, large changes like that and determine if they're special items. We had no special items in fiscal year 19, so no findings. And then what I'll do, instead of walking through the whole audit, if you scroll down, John, I think it starts on page 10 of the PDF. You're right there. Up a little bit. Yes, so this is the management's discussion and analysis, and this is kind of just something that we put together. It's not required, I think recommended by the state or by GASB. This is just an overview for somebody that doesn't want to dive through the whole audit. We can kind of pick our own highlights that we like to put in here. So kind of did the same thing as we did the audit before, where financial analysis, I mean, you could see, we always say that the money that we take in, about 70% of our total revenue comes from sub-state and state events. And then we like to point out less than 6% of our revenue comes from fees from schools. Highlights, accounts receivable increased by a large amount, primarily due to these officials fees that are paid via PayPal. And in the past it was done differently. Now, officials can register register through PayPal throughout the year. And on June 30th, the next day, Aaron goes and looks at the PayPal account, lets me know the amount that's sitting in their registrations. I just create a receivable. That way it's on the books. We transfer it over in a couple days. So that's the change there. And then current liabilities decreased by a big amount, and that was just due to no more severance liabilities are being paid out. So that's all paid in full. One thing we do have to issue is a subsequent event. So I kind of like to think of it, if you're reading every single one of these audits in chronological order, and so if the next chapter is this year, you're going to look and say, here's what's going to happen in the upcoming year. Due to the COVID outbreak, we had to cancel our spring sports. It resulted in a loss of net revenue, approximately $307,000. So that's what we had budgeted for gate minus what we had budgeted for expenses, plus what we actually did spend for those expenses for those events. And if we look at, this is just kind of a side-by-side abbreviated year of a balance sheet. You can see what's gone up and down. And again, our accounts receivable, I guess you'll see the investments, that big portion of investments, $106,000, like Brad said, the market was volatile. The accounts receivable, you see a big increase, and we touched on that. Liabilities, that big decrease is highlighted because of the no longer paying out the severance, and then not much change in net investment in capital assets. Really the change that does occur is all due to the GASB 68, that big 62,000. That's just a number based on our share of SDRS pension. And so we don't really have any control over that. There's a calculation that we go through. After that, the next page is just a side-by-side of the income statements, really abbreviated. You can see really 1.98% change in total revenue. So we're pretty consistent from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19. And then a 4.5% change in expenses. We ended up, there you'll see that special item. So at the end of the year, we ended up with a $2,531 loss, which is pretty good. And cash-wise, we did a little better than that. But this is on accrual basis, where we're looking at, we've got a depreciation expense, we've got our GASB expenses that we didn't actually pay out cash for, but that we do report on. So any questions about the audit? I'm going to end it there, otherwise it's a 35-page.
Well, I always keep this bedside in case I have trouble sleeping.
I'm going to frame this. I'm going to frame this one because there was no findings my first one, so we're happy about that.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, awesome job with no findings. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, item number 8 has been approved. Moving on to item number 9, receive finance advisory recommendations for fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. Dr. Sfordos. Actually, let me back up and get a motion in a second.
Just to note, this is not to approve these recommendations. This is a motion to just acknowledge that you've received them from the committee.
Okay, is there a motion? Second.
Motion to approve, Planting.
Motion by David.
Second by Mark.
Second by Mark. All right, Dr. Sfordos.
Okay. So we did meet with our finance advisory earlier this week. We went through our projections for the fiscal year 20 budget, which is the year we're in right now, obviously, and then a proposed budget for fiscal year 21. And working through those, the Finance Committee did make 2 recommendations. You can see there were two motions there. The first was a motion to set the state tournament team reimbursement percentage at 2019-20 at 0%. And that was a unanimous vote. As Isaac mentioned in his, when we were going through the finance, or through the audit, with the cancellation of our tournaments this year, it represented about a little bit over $800,000 in ticket sales that we didn't realize. And then to go along with that, there was around $500,000 worth of expenses attached to that. So the net loss was around $300,000. And we did receive that the PPP loan for about $179,000, and we got there's some other cost savings in terms of staff travel, board travel, quite a few other things that we didn't realize expenses on this year. In looking at our final projections for expenses, really the variable right now is that team reimbursement, and that's historically sort of been used as a float for our budget. We like to set a goal every year to reimburse at 80%. There's years where we've been able to do 100%. There's years where we do 60 or 70%. This year, at 0%, the loss to the association for the fiscal year is looking like it's going to be around $20,000, which is pretty good considering what has gone on. To reimburse at, pull this up here.
I sent that to you, John, if you want it up on the screen, Dan.
Yeah, well, he gets that up. To reimburse at 80%, we'd be looking at a total loss at around $120,000. To reimburse at 100%, we'd be about 140, and so on and so on. So I think that the consideration by the Finance Committee was that because next year is uncertain at the moment, while we are confident that we're going to be able to host events, what we don't know, what the unknown right now is what the fans are going to be at those events, and could potentially be a significant financial impact to us for next year. So just with the unknowns of next year, the recommendation by the Finance Committee would be to set those reimbursement percentages at 0. And schools do this all a bit differently. I think it was Mo in the committee said, they put in their budget to receive some reimbursement back for some of the sports they go to where they always have someone going, where, track and field or cross country. A lot of schools, I'm sure, do it for wrestling. But some of the bigger ticket items or the bigger reimbursements that you receive would be for essentially volleyball and basketball, and then football to a smaller extent. So it's difficult in terms of budget with these things. Are you still pulling that up?
Right in there.
If you go to the revenue tab at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Way left.
There you go. Yeah, trying to look through most.
And looking at what that total dollar amount is per school.
Turn sideways, but I think it's gonna help.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
The dollar amount per school that we're looking at varies from $50 to $60 at 100% reimbursement to $4,000 to $5,000. It just depends on how many of their teams made it to the state tournament, where those state tournaments were held, things like that. So a vast majority of them are in that $100 to $300 to $400 range, and then you've got a dozen or so, I would guess, that are in that $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 range in terms of reimbursement.
It's worth noting too, the reason that they're in that $3,000 to $4,000 range is because it's instead of in like the $15,000 range, which some of them are, is because we didn't have like the big basketball.
Right.
Yeah, so it's going to be less of a hit. It's a different 0% than it would be on a full year, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yep. So yes, the total here with what we ended up having was $120,000 at 100%. That is essentially what you'd be giving back in addition to what we're seeing here for a net.
There's the $18,000 loss at 0%. So yeah, if you did 42,000 out to the $138,000 loss. So it's.
But this is prorated for the events that we had. So in a normal year, our reimbursements are in the $200,000 to $220,000 range. This year, because of the canceled winter and spring events, 100% reimbursement would be about $120,000. So, I think some of the things that they looked at, again, were that a lot of schools don't budget for this because it's unknown at the beginning of the year. Most schools, they realize the savings in not having those spring events in terms of transportation, some other things, and just more than anything, just with the unknowns that we have going into next year in terms of what our crowds will look like at the state events.
Schools know that that has fluctuated in the past. They've been aware that it's variable.
Yes. So that's, I mean, really that's the calculator right there. So 0%, we project that our end of year loss is going to be about $20,000, which again, all things considered, is incredible to me. And without that PPP loan, it would be around $200,000. So we can come back to that as we get to number 10, I believe, which is looking at team reimbursements. So the second motion that they made would be to, if you go back to the revenue budget, John.
Yeah.
The motion here is to remove participation fees, postage fees, subscription fees, and membership dues as a revenue source, and remove team reimbursements as an expenditure from the association budget beginning in 21-22, with us getting feedback this year on what the schools would think about that and making a final recommendation. Coming back to the Finance Committee in early 21, probably in January of next year, and then coming to the board with a recommendation on that following that meeting with the Finance Committee. And the thought here is we've got all these, we've got our participation fees, which is $60 per sport or activity. We've got our postage fee, which is $125 a school. We've got our subscription fee, which is $31 a school. And we've got a membership dues, which is 20 cents a kid, the minimum of $30, a maximum of $300. Okay, so we take that in, it ends up being around $180,000, $190,000 a year that we take in from every school. That's the total amount that we take in. And at the end of the year, we turn around and return $190,000 to $200,000 back to the schools, $200,000, $220,000 back to the schools. It's this, we take in money, then we give it right back. And everyone's giving us money, and then we turn around and give it back to the people who made it to state tournaments. Okay? I think from a business manager perspective, it'd be much easier to budget that. We're not writing a check for all these fees. We're also not getting this unknown amount of money back at the end of the year in reimbursement for our expenses at state tournaments. It would be much easier to budget as a school. You don't pay anything in, you're not getting anything back. It's just a portion of it. And then if we have a good year, the board can decide, hey, we've got a good year, we've got the surplus. You know, we can divide this up among the schools and return it to the schools, and it's a gesture of goodwill. But right now, everyone budgets to send us these participation fees, to send us the membership dues, to send us everything else. And it's really unknown to budget what they're going to get back at the end of the year. because you don't know if your team's going to make the state tournament. So the thought was, it's essentially a wash anyway. Let's just skip all this. I send you money, you send me money back, and make it a lot easier for us as business managers to budget. So that was their thought. Do you have the revenue budget here? I can show you what those revenue items end up being.
State legislature.
Oh yeah, and the other good part about that is then we're not taking any money in from schools that could be considered flow through tax dollars from the schools. The only thing we would be receiving would be a portion of their gate from sub-state events, which is ticket money. It's not money that's coming from taxes. It's not state funding that's flowing through the schools to us. And I know at the end of the day, it probably wouldn't make a difference with the legislature, but we could at least go to the legislature with in all honesty and say, we don't receive any funding from the schools that could come from state funding or local tax funding. Everything that we get is from gates, from people who are voluntarily coming to the game and paying fee to enter the game. So, right, so here's what we're talking about. This 4401 is our participation fees. That's at $60 per sport. This is that postage. That's $125 a school. This is that press pass, which is the subscription fee, which is a press pass, and it gets you the NFHS news stuff, access to that for your newspaper programs, your yearbook programs. Then we've got our membership dues here, which is about $10,000. So those 4 items there, it makes up about 5% of our revenue budget. So their thought was, these things together end up being about $190,000, $195,000. What you reimburse at the end of the year is somewhere around there, depending on how good of a year you've had. Why not just wash those out? It's a lot easier accounting-wise for a school. It's a lot easier budget-wise for a school. And then you're removing any notion of state aid or tax dollars coming to this association from the schools. So their recommendation here was to look at that, to start to implement that in 21-22, to get feedback from the schools this fall and early next winter, and then come back to the finance committee with what the schools thought of that idea, and then the finance committee would make a recommendation to this board by, it would be the February/March meeting next year. So if you have questions on that, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Dan, there are activities that we don't have team reimbursement for as well, correct?
Correct. None of the fine arts ones. And then none of the events where we don't charge a gate to enter, like golf, cross country, no tennis, cross country we don't reimburse. Right. I think that's because that involves so many.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that, but we have in the past charged a participation fee for that.
We charge participation fees for all of that.
Everything.
And then there's no reimbursement.
Yeah. To me, this makes a lot of sense, and it sounds like the business manager should go for this, and it should also help to maybe, I don't know how many calls the office receives on a yearly basis of, hey, why do we not get reimbursed for this, but I did for this activity?
Or a lot of it is, what's this $31?
Why do we got this money, and what am I supposed to do with it as a business manager? And,
yeah.
You know.
Schools would just need to budget some type of amount because the onus would be on them 100% for covering their expenses.
Right.
I know in the past years, our business managers had a problem with trying to get the reimbursement in before June 30th. I mean, they were always calling, are we going to get it? So
because it's determined at this meeting.
Yeah.
And then they go out to the schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will be a relief for her. If you want to worry about that.
Yeah.
Just a couple comments. I agree with Craig. I think it makes sense, the concept of no participation fee, especially for the ones that aren't making activities or whatever. But I also think we talked about this in August. I think we need to be cognizant of this as a board. Is And it fluctuates where it's at. I get all that. We've had a really rough year this year too, but our goal, I think, should always be trying to get that back to 100% of those teams that do in those sports. Just because I really feel we should not be penalized in schools for qualifying for state tournaments. And some of those that really kind of can turn into that to almost a financial penalty, I feel. And yes, we budget for it. I think we try to budget for every sport to get there, but I don't like that concept really, that it's going to cost us extra to qualify for a state tournament. It can be quite a bit sometimes. So
you're talking in terms of the travel costs and lodging.
Yes, and I think that should be one of our goals every year. And I know it's something you got to look at the final line, and I appreciate everybody doing all the work with financials, but we mentioned that in August, even when you're looking at goal setting, is where can we maybe create that, whether it's corporate or whatever. I think we just, I kind of agree with what came out of the financial advisory, but I just want to remind the board we kind of need to think about that all the time to try to get some of that back.
And you're right, Dan, it's kind of one of those fine lines, because I came from a school, or I'm at a school that has never qualified for never played in the state basketball, boys or girls, made it this year. And I don't know how many people from Faulkton are listening, or if our board is listening, but I think we would pay about anything out of pocket to have that experience. But to budget that every year and that feeling that, yeah, maybe you are getting, and I've looked at it in terms of wrestling, coming from a wrestling school that in the past had a very strong showing and still does, and send a team of cheerleaders there as well. And you start adding all that up, and it does kind of appear like there's a penalty for making it, and how many kids qualify for your wrestling tournament determines how many cheerleader rooms or whatever it is, So I think you'd have to be careful on that.
That's that balance of taking money from every school to reimburse those that are experiencing like success.
Yeah.
But
all those years it's subsidized.
You know what? You're right, Sean.
Yes. I mean, well, but really, the larger schools end up having that as just an item in the budget all the time, and it kind of fluctuates. But I don't know about the smaller school budget whether you leave that item in there.
Yeah. So the concept, I'm just talking out loud, would be to have it at 0%, but the possibility out there of doing some type of kickback or reimbursement, depending on financial.
Depending on the year.
But it's not structured like it is now.
I think the two main goals of it were, number one, to clean up the accounting process and make the budgeting process easier for business managers. And number two, to remove any funding that could be considered tax money or state funding flowing through the schools to us. And to be able to go to the legislature and say, we don't receive any state funding from schools. I think that would go a long ways. There's some, just like in any walk of life, there's somewhere it's not going to matter. But for a lot of legislators, and in general, I think that will go a long ways to be able to walk in there and say, look, we don't take any participation fees or dues or anything from the schools. None of the money that we receive could be considered flow-through tax funding. So, and it's like I said, it essentially ends up being a wash. We take in about $200,000 in those four items. We pay out on a normal year somewhere around $200,000 in team reimbursements at the end of the year. It cleans everything up. But again, if you're a winner, and I'm not trying to pick on winner, that is having a really good time in athletics right now and is making it to a lot of events, it adds up. But right now, that's money that's coming from Langford and Faulkton and everywhere else that just kind of.
Yeah, and I get that concept. I just, it's really going to depend on game, essentially, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's what the balance will be at the end of the year. Is if we have a good year attendance, there'll be more to go back. And I just think we need to always have that on our mind. Is there other ways that we can get a little more money to help those schools out? But I think this is clear.
We've heard feedback by Dan and Craig, a few others on that. I was in that meeting. I don't know I mean, we'll hear other feedback from other schools, but obviously notate that, I mean, I don't know if the terminology of reimbursements is going to go away, but I do agree some type of compensation if we can, which is not the structure. So I don't think we evolved into that portion in our meeting.
No, it may
that's still a possibility that we can give back to the schools. That didn't go
Well,
that
anytime you
far.
see the 0% there, it's concerning for us. Our district, it would be.
Yeah.
Would you need a formula for figuring out what it is? Say, if I have this, this is how we'll figure we have this.
We've got a formula for reimbursement right now, but what if you have to translate it into if there's language that surplus at the end of the year goes through this formula, it goes to these schools according to this.
You don't have, your schools won't have fees on the front side with your participation postage, so, you know, so there's, not that that's a huge budgetary, but it's something that you'll have in your pocket to be able to use for reimbursement, so to speak.
And I note that with this doesn't change what we're doing right now with catastrophic insurance. Our intention would be to continue to pay catastrophic insurance, which is right around $7 a kid that we're paying right now. We will continue doing that. This doesn't change that catastrophic insurance amount, which is at about the same amount of money. It's in that $175,000 to $195,000 a year, depending on the number of participants we have.
It seems like it's on the right path, the thoughts.
Yeah.
And we don't want to lose the thoughts of let's also help those that are making it, and can we find a way to do both? And we'll try to. We probably can, but it sounds like the right path.
If this is to come about, you know, we're talking about management fees, what to do with management fees, what to do with team reimbursements, you know, you rob one to pay the other, you know, those kinds of things too. So it will be a balancing act, there's no question.
All right. I don't believe there's a vote, even though we had a motion a second there. It was just a receipt of the acknowledgement of those. So, moving on to item number 10. Approve team reimbursements for 2020-21 school year. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah. Second by Barry.
At what percentage? No, I mean, we probably.
But the motion would need a percent.
The motion would need a percentage. Maybe we need to have a discussion first. So, you want to pull that one back up?
Yep.
So getting to go back here, the finance committee recommendation was to set this reimbursement at 0% for this year. And again, this is our projected end of year balance. For the fiscal year, it would be a negative $18,600 right now. That's at 0%. We reimbursed at 80%, which is normally our goal. You want to put 80% in there. Our end of year loss would be $114,671. Okay? So the recommendation by the finance committee was to do that at 0, largely because of the unknowns for this upcoming year.
Is this proposal for 1920 or 2021?
This is for fiscal year 20, the year we're in right now. We set our team
on the approval, it's 2021, which I thought we were looking at next year.
It does say 2021.
It should be 1920.
Oh, it should be 1920 school year. I
I'm
apologize.
less concerned about that than rather than trying to set it for next year. when we know
No,
more.
no, this would be for this current fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the recommendation from the finance advisory is at 0.
Unanimously, it was at 0.
Yeah. Everybody get that clarification?
I would amend my motion then.
Which one?
There's a recommendation at 0%.
Yes, that's where I was getting to.
And then we can have discussion.
Craig has amended his motion to include 0% for 2019-20 school year. Again, 0% for team reimbursements. Barry, you just second that amendment? Okay. Any further discussion other than what we've had? We've had a lot on the front end with the item before. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion's carried. Item number 11. Adoption of participation fees for the 2020-21 school year.
Our recommendation here, I left that vague because I wasn't sure what this would talk about, would be to keep it at the $60 that it currently is right now.
Okay. Recommendation is keep it at $60, and a lot of the discussion was some of the things the finance committee was looking at would be for the 21-22 school year to give schools the opportunity to provide input, business managers, and so forth. So this is regarding the 2020-21 school year. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Randy.
Second, Russ.
Second by Jerry. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, item 11 has been passed. Moving on to item number 12, conduct the first reading of the fiscal year 21 South Dakota High School Activity Association budget. Isaac?
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that I do know how to spell the word revenue. It's just cut off on each one of those. So, I'm aware how to spell it. So just to give you a kind of an idea of how our budget's laid out, because it's kind of a sprawling document here. And the reason it is so sprawling, so the first page is revenue, followed by our general and administrative expenses, followed by athletic expenses, followed by fine arts expenses. On that first page, you'll notice some things such as specifically like 4112 volleyball B, where in 1920 we budgeted 0, and then now we're budgeting 2021. We're going to actually have a revenue budget for that. We classified combined tournaments have their own revenue line, where individual tournaments have their own revenue line. So you can see some big fluctuations like, oh, combined volleyball 41-23, we went down 150,000. Well, that's because now it's split out between individual tournaments, and you'll see that on the expense side too. And the reason we keep that in there is just when audit comes in, they'll look at our budget from year to year. They'll do a variance testing and say, why did this change? And our auditors are aware that that's why it does. But we can see overall activities revenue from state events were going to be down $49,500, and that just has to do with Dan and I sat down and we looked at where's the event held based on past history. What are we looking at for attendance? We do the same thing for the expenses. Obviously, some arenas charge more expenses, or if they're held at a smaller location, we see less expenses. One thing to note, we'll talk about the sponsorship revenue. We did reach that agreement with SDPB. Dan, you want to touch on that?
Yeah. So our agreement with SDPB was for $100,000 a year. However, this spring, they reached out to us, and because we didn't have our state basketball or our state track, they had a lot of sponsors that had requested their money back for sponsorships that had paid during the year for the state basketball tournament, and then of course those didn't run. Okay, so our guarantee with them was $88,500, and then a percentage of their ad sales, and they'd already paid. They'd paid up front for those ad sales. So essentially, it's about $16,000 that they were asking back from us. We had agreed to that, and we're splitting it up over the next 2 years. So this contract is for $100,000 a year. However, we're giving them an $8,000 credit for the next 2 years to return that ad money back to them. So this is $92,000. Next year it'll be $92,000. For the 3 years after that, it would be $100,000. And I think there's an escalator in financing throughout that as well. But that's why that's at 92 instead of 100. And then we'll note down here, the merchandise partner, that's that $75,000 guarantee
from Fine Designs that we approved earlier. The one other thing I wanted to mention, I had a meeting yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, on the e-ticketing. This contract is going to change, so that amount will likely go down. So we'll reflect those changes at our second reading of the budget here in the e-ticketing.
I should say the e-ticketing too. What they do for us with the free printing of the tickets is, I mean, that saves us a ton of money. And
yes, that saves us double. That saves us about $20,000 a year, and we get a $10,000 guarantee.
Yep. And
the savings we get in those free tickets is more than what we receive in the financial contributions.
And
we'll keep receiving those.
Yep.
It's just that guarantee is turned into sort of a variable partnership sale because they really got wallops this year.
Yep. And sub-state revenues, we did really well this year, like really well. We were really happy about that, especially, and I think girls basketball did outstanding, and so did boys basketball. So we increased.
So that 16 attendance was really, really good.
Yeah, and that again ended up being kind of a saving grace with not being able to have some of those state events. So we're really happy with that turnout. So we did increase our sub-state budget a little bit, hoping that those attendance numbers continue. Fee revenues have stayed pretty well the same. We did increase our budget for participation fees just because we're seeing more schools attend more events. And you'll see that middle column is our year-to-date plus anticipated. And we waived fees for, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, it was
track and field, spring golf, and spring tennis.
Yep. And so those are.
And what was the other one? Visual arts for me?
I don't remember.
No, I don't think we. Never mind.
Sorry. Okay.
Keep going.
But that's why that actual amount is down.
When you're looking at the actual here.
Yep. General revenue, kind of our miscellaneous stuff, everything pretty well stays the same. One thing to note, that 4506, our registration of officials, we've budgeted 70,000. We brought in 7,900, and that's, we talked about how we had that big accounts receivable increase. Because all that money's sitting in PayPal right now, so that'll go up at the end of the year. We'll make a receivable, and we're comfortable with where that is. So not a big change there. One thing that I will point out, this is a cash basis budget. In the past, we've budgeted for the amount of billions in kind donation, and that 38,000, that line 4607, is called contributions. And contributions and donations. We should have probably renamed the line anyway. I think if somebody were to look at this, they think that it's a donation perhaps for the foundation. But since we budget for that for $38,000 worth of revenue, and we also budget for that as $38,000 worth of staff travel expense. And so
that's the implied value of the vehicles that we use for billion every year.
Yes, and so since that's not a cash item, we're just going to remove that from the budget. So it's a wash. It ends up being a wash, but I think it just looks a little cleaner. But that's why you see a large decrease there. So that's the revenue portion of it. And if we move into the expenses, we've kept our salaries the same at the top. The health insurance is highlighted just because we're switching providers and we haven't gotten our finalized new quotes yet. So that number will change, but it should be actually pretty well the same. I think it might change by maybe 2 or 4%. It's not going to be a dramatic change. Yeah. Some of the other items in the purchase services, a lot of that includes meetings that our staff would normally attend, and if those meetings have been moved to online or canceled, those amounts have gone down. That one that's highlighted shouldn't be highlighted. That's just a regular $1,200 expense. So I go down to the total, John.
This is, scroll back up really quick. This is where that 38,000 comes back out.
Yep.
So we took it out of the revenue side. We're taking it out of the expenditure side as well.
Yes. So we'll still report that at the end of the year because we report on an accrual basis, but we budget on a cash basis.
So far, yeah, we've got a few that we're still waiting on. I haven't heard anyone say that.
So if you see just down at the bottom, the variance, so it looks like we did really well. Like we're going to decrease our expenses by 80,000. Well, 38 of that is that billion amount, and then the rest of that is fairly due to meetings not being attended or things that have been canceled or going online. Otherwise, expenses, that section generally remains pretty well the same from year to year. Go down. Is there any questions so far? Sorry, I'm kind of buzzing along. Other objects mainly includes our big insurance costs. Well, not the big ones, I guess. Catastrophic was on that first page, but not a lot of change there. We're pretty well. Yeah, $800 change, so nothing there. So far budgeted, and that capital expenditures, I think, was Aaron giving much needed upgrades to this room, and that's where that amount came in. And we had budgeted for that, but we don't have any planned capital expenditures this year.
Eventually, we're going to have to upgrade our website, and that's going to be not significant, but it's going to be an expense. Probably more than what we think it would be.
Yeah. I apologize for the formatting here. I just couldn't get it to print out very well, but this is where you'll see, again, we talked about how those combined tournaments, so when we had a combined AA tournament, it looks like we're not budgeting anything for that. That's because it's going to be split out. Basketball AA boys is right beneath it, basketball AA girls is right beneath that. So,
and you'll note here on our team expenses, we budget for 100% reimbursement of team expenses. So with this on the expenditure side, that's assuming 100% reimbursement.
and even that 100% amount could change. I mean, I think for volleyball this year we budgeted 42,000, ended up being 70,000, just because of the teams that travel. And did they have to stay an extra day too? I can't remember. Yeah. So that does change. But again, Dan and I went through, you've all gotten your board packets, those state event financials. We go through the state event financials for the past few years and look, where they were held and assessing fees, updating if we've increased officials' fees, things like that. So that's all taken into account here. I won't run through every single event, but like you said, it gets to be long. And then fine arts, we do the exact same thing. Student council saved a bunch of money. Also, we refunded all the student council registrations. And I think that budget has gone down in 2021, but you can see not many expenses came out of there. Those were some costs in the middle column that we've paid, but we saw that with, same with trophies and things with the athletics, that's just a sunk cost, even though the event wasn't held. Brooks has reviewed all these and implemented those changes. So that is our small picture from the top, with our budget revenue 2.77, netting at $62,000 surplus, and that's in the big help, or big thanks to that merchandise contract, really.
Yes. So this 62,000, that'll change for next month. This is assuming the management fees remaining the same from last year next. Yes. Whatever recommendations we make for increases in management fees, this is sort of the money we're playing with there.
Any further questions?
First reading.
Okay.
Next, the August one will look a little bit different than this.
So looking for a motion to approve first reading.
So moved, Baker.
Motion by Dan.
Second. Maher.
Second by Dr. Maher. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Here.
Yeah.
I need a donut break.
Yeah, I was just going to ask us if anybody have a problem taking a recess. All right. 10:40. Do a 10-minute recess. Be back at 10:40.
Whose music deserves to be heard.
I perform for all the stagehands who make sure I never miss a cue.
I perform for our high school choir director, who taught me to breathe from the diaphragm and sing from the heart.
Speech, debate, theater, music. The performing arts teach valuable life lessons that typically aren't taught in the classroom. They help high school students learn leadership skills that prepare them to enjoy more satisfying, productive lives.
I perform for Mrs. Evans, my high school debate coach, who has helped me become more confident than I ever dreamed possible.
This message presented by South Dakota High School Activities and the high school in your community.
Hey, I've got a question for you. Who will you perform for?
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
This may sound like a typical high school basketball game being played on a Friday night in South Dakota. In fact, it's a crash course in cooperation and teamwork. It's a test of dedication, determination, and drive. It's character development in action. If you think high school sports are only about competition, think about this. High school sports can play a critical role in a student's overall education. In fact, studies show that students who participate in school sports are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in their academic lives. At the same time, playing sports helps teach lessons not covered in the classroom. Lessons like tolerance, respect for the rules, and the importance of supporting your community. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. There's just one place where students are students first, and athletics are played with purpose and perspective. That place is your local high school. High school sports offer more than the joy of competition. Studies show that student athletes in South Dakota are also likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in other areas of their lives, including academics. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in South Dakota. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
These days, the concept of value matters more than ever. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a better value than high school sports. Extracurricular activities, including sports, make up about 2% of the budget for a typical South Dakota high school. In return, participation in sports promotes citizenship and sportsmanship. Sports also instill a sense of community pride and teach lifelong lessons about cooperation and self-discipline. They encourage physical fitness. They produce community leaders. By offering so many benefits to the community for such a small percentage of a school's overall budget, it's easy to see why high school sports are one of the best bargains around. The real cost would come from not having them at all. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
What do basketball, choir, drama club, and marching band all have in common? They're all high school activities that offer learning opportunities not necessarily found in the classroom. They take up just a fraction of a typical South Dakota high school's budget, and they go a long way to giving young people the tools they need to thrive. High school activities. They're more than extracurricular. They're extra important, too. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
It may not require a textbook, but it's filled with valuable lessons. It may not take place in a classroom, but it's an ideal environment for learning. It may not involve a diploma, but it can help prepare South Dakota's young people for life. It's high school sports. High school sports can play a critical role in a student's overall education. In fact, studies show that students that participate in high school sports are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in their academic lives. If you think high school sports are only about competition, think again. Better yet, think about attending a high school sporting event in your community. You'll be amazed by what you see. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
Let's talk about the X's and O's of family entertainment. Every parent in South Dakota knows the importance of being able to draw up an activity that'll get you out of the house for a couple of hours. But it needs to be affordable. It needs to be family friendly. Above all, it needs to be fun. Now, let's talk about high school sports. Bang for your buck, school sports provide the perfect game plan for your family. You'll enjoy all of the drama and excitement competitive sports offer. You'll be supporting the future leaders of our community in a meaningful way. Best of all, you can take the entire family without breaking the bank. Heck, you won't even dent it. Now, enough chalk talk. Let's get out there and see what's playing at the high school in your community. School sports. Good for our kids, good for our community. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
I perform for our high school choir director, who taught me to breathe from the diaphragm and sing from the heart.
Speech, debate, theater, music, the performing arts teach valuable life lessons that typically aren't taught in the classroom. They help high school students learn leadership skills that prepare them to enjoy more satisfying, productive lives.
Hey, I've got a question for you. Who will you perform for?
This message presented by South Dakota High School Activities and the high school in your community. There's just one place where students are students first, and athletics are played with purpose and perspective. There's just one place where a team is more than a group of individual agendas. It's a catalyst for demonstrating the potential of the collaborative spirit. There's just one place where players, coaches, and fans experience the exhilaration that happens when an entire community rallies behind the school team. That place is your local high school. High school sports offer more than the joy of competition. Studies show that student athletes are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in other areas of their lives, including academics. In addition, high school sports help young people in South Dakota develop the discipline and confidence they need to be leaders in life, even as they unite communities like nothing else. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
Who do I play for? I play high school basketball for every baller who ever played a pickup game on a driveway, playground, or alley, because we all share the same dream. I play for buzzer beaters, big-time boards, and burying rainmakers. I play high school basketball for the chance to put my hometown in South Dakota on the map by playing in a state championship.
Only 0.5% of all high school student athletes play basketball in college, but all 100% of them become adults. That's why playing basketball in their high school team is so important. High school athletes learn life lessons that help them grow up. Lessons that can't be taught in the classroom and often aren't taught at home.
I play high school basketball because I love performing in front of a capacity crowd in my hometown gym.
This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. They are role models and educators. Their work requires a great deal of time and energy for very little pay. Who are these unsung heroes?
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
The simple truth about education-based athletics in South Dakota is this: without a committed team of coaches and administrators, it just wouldn't be possible. School sports, they bring out the best in all of us. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
If an individual student athlete or team wins a high school state championship, it's an amazing thing. It's also just the icing on the cake. That's because young people in South Dakota who participate in education-based athletics are already winners. Studies show that win or lose, participation helps to impart skills they can use to enjoy greater success in other areas of their lives. School sports teach the benefits of teamwork, the value of self-motivation, and the importance of accountability. They also help to foster stronger work habits and higher levels of self-esteem. In other words, the true value of school sports can't be measured in terms of wins or losses. If an individual or team goes to state, it's an incredible accomplishment. But regardless of the outcome, today's student athletes are already destined to go far. School sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
He worked out early, practiced late, and studied well into the night. The next day, he did it all over again.
She missed time hanging out and socializing with friends so she could make it on time to practices and games.
He became a top student and a confident leader, even as he helped his team win back-to-back conference titles.
She became a role model in her community, even as she led her team to an undefeated season.
And when they finished playing high school sports, what did they do next?
She graduated from college with honors and went to work for a successful company.
He attended graduate school and became a difference maker in his community.
Because that's what student athletes in South Dakota do. They use the skills they develop playing high school sports today
to do even bigger things in life tomorrow.
High school sports,
a winning part of a complete education.
This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in South Dakota. This is sportsmanship. School sports, it's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Who do I perform for? I perform for all the awesome composers whose music deserves to be heard.
I perform for all the stagehands who make sure I never miss a cue.
I perform for our high school choir director who taught me to breathe from the diaphragm and sing from the heart.
Speech, debate, theater, music. The performing arts teach valuable life lessons that typically aren't taught in the classroom. They help high school students learn leadership skills that prepare them to enjoy more satisfying, productive lives.
I perform for Mrs. Evans, my high school debate coach, who has helped me become more confident than I ever dreamed possible.
This message presented by...
Excellent one. Okay, we should be good on my end.
Okay, welcome back. We will go ahead and resume. We're on item 13, approve district, region/state awards for the 2021 school year. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. Valentine.
Motion by David.
Second, Brian.
Second by Brian.
One correction, we mistakenly put the co-ed awards under dance, it should be under cheer. There are awards for co-ed.
My fault.
That's okay, but just, we'll make that move.
Take back your motion.
Yeah, I'll amend my motion.
And the only other addition there would be the girls wrestling individual medals.
Okay, any further discussion?
Did we get gymnastics changed to? What's that? State. Yeah, state should be 10. We're one down in those.
For the all-around individuals?
Yeah.
An individual event?
Individual, yeah, those should be 10 instead of 15. If you remember a couple of years ago, we talked about trying to coincide those awards with track, trying to get to 8. I recommend, well, I guess I should show you. In advisory, we talked about the means of, we went from 20 to 15, and now it's time to move to 10. So that one should change as well.
Okay, so a couple changes to note there. Co-ed cheer only, and then gymnastics individual medals should be 10 instead of 15. And all around as well?
Yes, the all around and the individual, where you see the 15, those should both be 10 in class A and L1.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, item 13 has been approved. Moving on to item 14, conduct a second reading of sites venues for the 2023-24 school year.
Yeah, no changes other than I think we updated the dates for the spring golf.
There's the TBD for all state band that's listed. I was able to contact all of our sites. Mitchell was supposed to go this year, and they requested to host it next year. So I contacted the other sites I had contracts with, and they all agreed to push it back a year, so that one will be in Pier.
Okay.
Motion to approve, Rasmussen.
Motion by Jerry.
Casson, second.
Second by Craig. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Moving on to item number 15, conduct a second reading on proposed changes to the athletics handbook, proposed changes for the Sports Officials Advisory Council, proposed changes from the Sports Medicine Advisory Council. Okay. Motion to approve first.
So moved, Aker.
Motion by Dan. Second. Second by Brian. Hey, go ahead, Dr. Schwartz. If we have discussion after that, we will.
Yeah, so you can see there the votes on all of these. These are all the ones that came out with positive votes from that first reading. If there were any that needed to be pulled out to be re-voted on, you would do that now, or you could vote as a second reading on all of these. You can go through each one of them individually, but it's essentially the ones that received positive votes, first reading in April. And if they were unanimous, it's mentioned on there, if there are votes that were not unanimous, you can see in football it was a 5-3, 6-2, 8-0, 8-0. So it's up to you on how you want to do it.
Okay. I'm going to ask, is there anybody from the board that wishes to take any of those out to do separately?
Well, I think we need, now's the time to address kind of like what Mr. Schmidt from Summit was talking about the 20% rule. I've talked with Mr. Halsher from Wilmot previously and some other
people up our way that have co-ops that this would affect, and we're here about participation and for the kids and everything, and if it's going to put, 20% is going to put, kids not participating, I think we should just probably maybe be a little bit concerned about that and look at that.
When we went through and looked at the cooperatives, Dakota Hills, which is Summit, Wilmot, Waubee, appeared to us would be the only one that would potentially move from 9-man to 11-man with this change. And it really is dependent on who the primary school is between Summit and Wilmot. And I believe if Wilmot is the primary school, they'll be under. If Summit is, they'll be pretty close. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's their numbers have been very close with that 3-school co-op. I mean, it is what it is. It's a 3-school co-op, and their combined enrollment without any reduction is somewhere closer to 70 than it is 60. So they're using the 10% rule, and I think a lot of the discussion was about those 3 and 4 teamers. Is they're using the 10% rule to bring all the communities in. You're absolutely right, David. It allows them to participate, but I think the concern from the others is how far is too far with getting to use that rule, just to have a team versus being really successful by using that rule. It's a balance.
There is. That's exactly the word I was going to use. There's a balance there, and not a perfect line. There's probably always going to be somebody on that line. But my question was it one of participation, or was it a point of classification?
Participation, because Wilmot, in their situation, the way Mr. Holscher was explaining to me is they will go, if they're going to go 11-man, the way it sounds, they'll break the co-op, and Wilmot will go by themselves. And he said we'll be lucky to get boys to come out because they'll be young kids, he said, basically, and the success rate will be.
Always be young kids?
No, they're going to be older, but he said right now, he said there'll be a bunch of young kids trying to play against seniors, and they'll get frustrated and they can't sustainable their program on their own. So,
in that argument, that sounds mean. It's somewhat like classification. I understand having younger kids and wanting to encourage them and keep them out. Totally understand that as you're trying to build a program success, and then going up a class can affect that. But it's also, again, if these kids were all seniors, would it be the same consideration?
Well, they'll be in the lowest class. Will not be in the lowest class either on their own. It's not classification. It's just.
But it is in that their ability to participate isn't being reduced. They just don't. No. They don't want to play 11-man football, and if they get moved up there, they would make the choice to break the.
Well, one field. Well, they'd have to expand the field too, or either that or play all their home games in Summit because Wilmot's an 80-yard field.
Yeah.
So they're close now, but in the future they.
It's really dependent on again who that primary school is.
That's the only.
When's the deadline to declare that you are the primary school?
Well, it all kicks off of the enrollment counts.
Yeah. Okay, there's not a choice there.
Yeah.
But they're that close to boys, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So I just pulled up. This is the DOE numbers of your school's counts from 8, 9, 10 this last year. So what would be 9, 10, 11 coming up? Wilmot's at 27, Summit's at 19, Waubee's at 21. So Wilmot would shift back to being that larger school, so there may be a chance, because traditionally, as I understand it, that maybe Waubee and Summit haven't, going back 4 years ago, when they were the satellite schools and the percentage schools, it did help them out, because they had fewer participants from those two schools, and I mean, it would make sense at 19 and 21 that that's where it would be. Now, obviously, we know those numbers aren't concrete and those things, but, you know, the other piece of it is we've had teams too that, because of those scenarios, if that's what's best for their kids, I mean, it's you do have that option of playing non-playoff eligible and staying 9-man because of your field scenarios. It's not a great option, I get it, But maybe for a 1 year or whatever, as we're talking about a 1 year cycle, maybe it's not the absolute worst thing ever for me to get to play.
Britton did that for several years, didn't he?
Yeah, Britton did that for a couple year period, basically right before they were in the dome, 4 years ago when they made that first trip. They just come off a 2 year hiatus, if you will. So I think it's really what it comes down to is the concern in the discussion was, especially among the 9-man ranks, they felt that the 10% rule just wasn't significant enough of it was too good of a helper, I guess is probably the way to put it. It was too beneficial to those that were able to use it or got to use it or what have you, and that's why they wanted to see it. I mean, there was honestly a move to get rid of it completely. And this was kind of the middle ground negotiation to at least keep something in there to allow some consideration for those situations. But again, in a scenario where you've got 60, 70, 80 males and we're counting 45 of them or 48 of them, maybe that is too far. And I think that's what the representation for the 9-man kind of brought forward.
The other co-op I think we had looked at was North Border. That's the 14 one. But they're already splitting up where that's Eureka Bottle,
Leola
Frederick, Eureka Bottle, and I believe Leola Frederick they split up. Leola Frederick will be on their own. Eureka Bottle is going to be with Edmond Central. And Edmond Central or Ipswich will be on their own.
And then you've got the Trip Delmont Armory and East Central Dakota. I mean, there's some of those that even with the 20% rule, it won't jump them up as long as their ratio of kids that have played doesn't significantly change. So I mean, really, they are
might
kind
move
of
within classifications in 9-man.
Yeah, they might be a AA instead of an A or whatever. But
the move to 11-man, I believe, it was just Dakota Hills and then North Border, and North Border is already great.
John, when is the roster looked at during those classification cycles? Is it at the end of the season or?
I go in at a date that is not publicly known.
Very good.
Capture a PDF. Here's their roster. Usually sometime in the middle of the season, so you don't have kids getting pulled.
Yep.
And then that's exactly what we do. Is we turn right back around. We shoot it to the schools and say, okay, help me identify your kids. If there's any question, obviously we have the eligibility report, But that's exactly what we do to ensure some sanctity, because there was some question about that. I think it was my first year in the office about somebody's 10% number and whether it was accurate or not. So, yeah.
I've been asked that. I've never been able to give a real good answer. That's a great practice.
All right, going back to would anybody would you like that pulled out, David, separately? Or anyone?
I'm okay with it. I mean, we discussed it. We had some good discussion, and if I feel comfortable leaving it in there, I just wanted to make it a point of discussion.
All right, I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion before we approve second reading? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, item 15 has been passed. Item 16, conduct a first reading on the proposed changes for the SDHSAA Fine Arts Handbook. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second, Cassens.
Motion by Randy, second by Craig. Any discussion, or Brooks, if you have something first, go ahead.
I'll just kind of go through these. There are not a ton of proposed changes. You've got them in front of you. Start with music. We discussed that we require all of our head music instructors to attend a fall region music meeting in person. Because of COVID-19, we've decided to allow the option of people to attend via Zoom. We'll still encourage people to go. in person if it is within guidelines and we can socially distance, but just to allow that. Second item on there is just some clarification on our spot check policies, what to do if schools fail more than once, and you can see the changes recommended within there. The third point is in regards to our All-State Jazz auditions, just to add the stipulation that the auditions must be recorded by the student's band director or private instructor so that students aren't doing recordings at home and finding their buddy from college who also plays the trumpet and could do a better take than they could and send that in. So just so we have a little bit more oversight there. All of those items passed unanimously for music. Moving down the speech, the biggest changes we had were in debate. First thing in debate is to remove policy debate as a sanctioned activity. We just don't have the participation numbers to sustain that anymore. We are going to replace that with informative speaking. Well, not really replace it, but just add informative speaking while removing policy debate. And then I included in there a completely revised debate handbook. One thing that we talked about was to find a way to make our policies adhere more with the National Speech and Debate Association, because all of our debaters across the state, as they're preparing, their ultimate goal is to go to national championships hosted by the NSDA. And so we formed a subcommittee, and I want to thank Gary Conda out of Aberdeen for heading up that committee. And they went through and compared our policies with the NSDA policies, and you can see all of the changes in there. Just to make it simple for you guys, I included the entire handbook with all the markups on there of everything that was changed and added. Again, it was all things approved by the debate coaches in the state and adhere to the NSDA rules. For One Act, we're going to add a rubric to be used at regional contests. That rubric is also included in the packet. We're making a change to our theatrical design contest in the marketing category. And in place of doing a 2-page paper, we decided to add a social media aspect. And so students will come up with a social media campaign. They'll create a 2-minute video, and they'll send me the link to that for the judges to use. And then we'll have those videos on display at the state festival. We also made just a slight change to our award stress policy for One Acts and oral interp and debate, I believe. Instead of saying students must wear dress clothes, we're saying they are strongly encouraged to wear dress clothes, because obviously that's not something that we can really police. And I'm sorry, but if a kid comes up in jeans to get an award, I'm not going to say, just go sit down. So we're just going to strongly encourage them to do that. And then also adopt Death of a Salesman as the theatrical contest, technical theater contest prop. For oral interp, remove Article 5, Section 15.4.d. Limited stage movement shall be allowed. The narrator may move about, and the compositional groupings may change. That practice has changed at the national level, and it's trickled down into our district and region contests. And so we all unanimously decided that we should get rid of that. Again, the change in the award stress policy, and then to adopt magical as the storytelling theme. For all of our other advisory committees, there were no proposals. I'll answer any questions if you want.
Any questions for Brooks? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you, Brooks, for your time put into that proposals and the proposed changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, item 16, first reading on the proposed changes for Fine Arts Handbook has passed. Item 17, approve state and sub-state ticket prices effective for the 2020-21 school year. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. David.
Motion by David.
Second, Mark.
Second by Mark. Dr. Sordos, and if we have any discussion afterwards.
So essentially, we're recommending a few changes here. The first is to get our classes of basketball the same. Right now, there's different prices for B basketball, different prices between B girls basketball, B boys basketball, and now they're going from combined to single sites. So we're trying to get some continuity here. So our recommendation is for all classes of basketball for it to be $45 for an adult season pass, $30 for a student season pass, and then $15 and $10 for those.
Yeah, just so board's aware, the intent on that is that those are now all-day tickets.
Instead of 6.
So what we've been doing in the combined A and AA, we're bleeding over to all 6 separate tournaments. So it's $15, gets you all Thursday, all Friday, all Saturday. The one unique one is we will still, or 2 unique ones is we will still do reserved on the chairbacks at the Barnett Center in Aberdeen, just as that's been a sales point and sales pitch to those qualifying teams. And we're still navigating with the Pentagon exactly how we're going to handle everything there, just with constraints and facility size and making sure that we're able to accommodate as best we can. So we might come back to you in August with a little bit of an amendment to what we're going to do specifically for events there, just because of the smaller venue.
The second one there was track and field. Just bumping back to 12 and 7 just with the increased costs that we've seen associated with track and field, and we haven't changed the price on that since 2009. Just moving it from 10 and 6 to 12 and 7. And then Oral and Turf we had down as being a ticketed entry, and it is not. And then we had combined the jazz band and show choir. And the last note there is that this year we've got the one-off volleyball where it's been combined. And this year, those are single sites. Again, it'd be day passes. So we just have a note there that those prices would remain the same at the single sites as they were at the combined. So
3 sessions with volleyball.
3 sessions as well. Yeah, session a day. So, looking forward next year, we're going to get another year of data on wrestling. That was quite a bit of shock to us this year, adding that 3rd day and the costs associated with that. We had bumped it up $5 to compensate for that, but it was going from 2 days to 3 days ended up being about double the costs, which doesn't make much sense to me, but we were able to negotiate some of that. We had been looking at maybe it would be a 3rd more because we've been 2 days and we went to 3 days, but it ended up being double the cost. So, but we want another year of data on that before we look at increasing the price for that.
And the other note I would maybe just submit there too is it's a little different animal with how those contracts are structured in the Civic Center in Rapid versus Premier Center in Sioux Falls. Premier Center is billable labor, where we get literally billed out for their labor, whereas the Civic Center in Rapid is a strict $2 per ticket off the top fee and it's done. So it ends up, it'll be interesting to see the data, not taking an increase, but seeing how that plays out now with the schedule you just approved over 3 days, 6 sessions and some of those things. And balancing what our needs are going to be going forward after that.
The wrestling is a bit unique in that we can't really go to those day sessions in wrestling. So in those instances, if we're getting charged $2 a ticket, and we've got 6 sessions, we're losing $12 off the top.
that ticket, just in the ticket cost, plus the other things going on. Whereas when we can go to day passes, that cost to us is $6 off the top instead of $12 off the top. But because of the format of wrestling and the way it's sort of scheduled, we can't go to a day pass in that. So there are some differences in there.
Okay, any further questions, discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item 17 has passed. Moving on to item 18, review and approve South Dakota High School Activity Association Board election and constitutional amendment election results. Dr. Swartos.
Yeah, we check these and double check these and triple check these. Isaac did a great job of keeping these all straight. It can be a little bit of a daunting task, but you can see the votes there. For that East River at-large superintendent, someone would have needed 50% of the vote to win that outright without a runoff. There were 152 votes total on that one, I believe. So nobody received 70% of the vote. So it goes to the top 2 vote getters. So there will be a runoff between Tom Culver of Avon and Keith Larson of Chester for that spot. We'll get those out after this meeting, and schools will have their July board meetings to get those votes in and get those returned to us. So the other one, we have our Division I principal, Michael Talley from Rapid City Central. Was the top vote getter in that one. Marty Wisemantle of Groton ran unopposed for the small school group board of education. And then that constitutional amendment 1 dealing with the start date for basketball, correct?
Yes.
Or is it
that was the
minimum?
10 practice rules, now 5 practice rules,
Yeah.
so everything we just approved is actually legal.
Yeah. So that was a 143 yes to 11 no vote. So the election results would be that Michael Talley and Marty Wisemantle would be elected to seats on the board. There will be a runoff between Tom Culver and Heath Larson for the East River at-large superintendent position, and Amendment 1 has passed.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the election results?
So moved. Brian.
Motion by Brian.
Second.
Second by Barry.
Interesting. 4 different ballots to cast votes on there. 4 different numbers.
Yeah, there's schools that will just vote on the constitutional amendments. There's schools that will. There's 100 different ways schools can vote. Some send 1 back, some send 2 back, some send them all back.
I suppose some only vote on
Your class.
their class. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to item 19, consider changes to the 2020 summer contact period moratorium and end date.
Okay, so just to set the stage here, right now, our summer moratorium dates are July 1st through July 7th, and our summer contact period would end on Saturday, July 31st. So I know at our special meeting, there was a request to take, there was some discussion about this, and then there was a request to further explore this at this meeting here. So I believe most of the conversation revolved around the potential of adjusting that July moratorium date, potentially adding day to the end date to get through that first weekend, or that to August 1st. Is that correct? John?
August 2nd. Yeah.
2nd.
Saturdays 1, Sundays 2.
Okay, to get through that weekend. Some things to note. It did come out that there's a large track meet that will be held that first weekend in August in Sioux Falls. It is a national track meet.
Maybe. That's not it.
That's not a, okay. That's been proposed. Who's the, is it
National Scholastic Athletic Federation?
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
it used to be put on by Nike and then New Balance, and I think they're without a sponsor now. It used to be USATF, and it's not anymore. I can't remember.
Yeah. So
if this were extended, our schools would have a chance to attend that. Likewise, if it's not extended, our schools would not have the opportunity to attend that.
That's that weekend, or would be that?
That would be that August 1st and 2nd. There's also a national golf tournament that's going on, I believe, in North Carolina, for that weekend in August, where we've had several schools contact us.
Same weekend?
Yes.
They're playing a deal at Pinehurst, like that second, third, fourth, fifth.
The reason that Sioux Falls might host a track meet is because Greensboro, North Carolina said we won't.
Well, maybe there's a different decision coming here right now.
But there is a national golf meet in North Carolina that several of our schools have contacted us about going to if this is extended. So I think what was visited about at our last meeting in regards to the moratorium is, right now it's July 1st through the 7th. What we lost in terms of summer contact, strictly speaking, was 1 day. Generally, it would have started on May 31st. Instead, our guidance began on June 1st for this. Now, some schools have addressed that differently, and everyone has approached this in different ways. So that's what we have right now, and any changes that would be made, I think, as a staff, we're okay with whatever's decided here. We just wanted to make you aware of some of those things in that first weekend in August as you talk about this.
And did you say that some colleges have backed up their summer camps into that last week because they have shortened time to get those camps in?
I think a lot of the colleges, to be quite honest with you, are looking more at not having anybody on campus.
Okay.
It's maybe more some of the for-profits and realistically some of the leagues that our schools and teams have participated in that they're looking at that kind of that phase 3 framework that we posted and realizing that's the end of June. Well, if you try to do a 5 or 6 week league, you run out of dates with that 1 through 7 being out of there. So I think that was kind of one of the major ones that had reached out to us, was trying to figure out where can I have 5 consecutive days of the week where I can do something in.
I know of a couple that have went to that last weekend. But my thoughts, and I shared them before, is I'm 100% in favor of the summer moratorium, and as it sits, and the end of the summer contact end date. And granted, the beginning we only lost 1 day of our summer contact, but I think not only physical but emotional to make this adjustment for our student athletes, to allow them to do something and help maybe ease the pain of the end of winter and spring sports. I just feel it'd be a good decision. That's my thoughts. And obviously for 1 year, considering the COVID and what we went through, because otherwise I wouldn't be saying that.
Well, I guess personally I'd like to shrink the down to like no contact, like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. You know, and then as opposed to July 1st to the 7th. That way we do.
Yeah, and I didn't clarify, that'd be not to get rid of it, but
So you're saying, just to be clear, in July?
Yeah.
To have the moratorium be July 3, 4, or 5?
Yep.
Just for this year.
Yep. So yeah, currently there's no motion or anything, so if somebody were to get one, it'd be to
I mean, I think that would be.
give those specific dates.
And not to change on
And
the
then,
back end?
and then extend the back end too, also.
Hey, Marlo, this is Randy. Can I say a couple words?
Yes, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I think most of us have planned already of not having or using the moratorium at 1st through the 7th or 8th or whatever it is. I don't know if I'm in favor of opening that up. I'm more in favor of extending it at the end a little bit to allow some of those tournament things that happen if we need to do that. But I'm more concerned about opening it up on the 1st or the 8th. Most of us have plans in place already. we'll have to go back and change a lot of those, not that we can't, it's just, I think most of us have those already lined up and consider that a break. And we have cleaning things in gyms, we have all kinds of stuff that go on during that moratorium that we have scheduled. And that would put more pressure on some of us to try to open that up now. And we haven't normally done that, so that's why I would say keep it the same and maybe extend it again.
Dan?
I kind of think a little bit like Randy. The two concerns that popped in my head and I thought about a lot is, I know we're in unique situations here, but I don't like making exceptions. I think you set some precedents on that. And I really fall back to, I think this moratorium was put in for families to have a chance to, and the student athletes and even the coaches, to get a break. Now, we're in a unique situation, I understand that, but I also feel that we're probably have quite a few that have made that plans for that break already because it was built in. And those are the two things that, and I agree with you, Mo. I also feel that I think our student athletes need a little extra this year too. So I'm kind of conflicted in this. Those are the two big concerns that jump to me. Or make an exception for anything sometimes, and I know we got to look at that. But this was put in for a break for student athletes, and probably more importantly, family time, where there's a chance that they have a chance to get something in the summer, as busy as they get. And I would lean to a no on that a little bit, unless there's something different, I guess. Just because I think there's plans made already. I really do. I think it'll affect a lot, but my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would echo that. I don't know that I'm leaning no, but I would echo the conflicting portion. Just like kids need the opportunities, and coaches are chomping at the bit to have kids with them. Families too are looking for opportunities to get out and about now, and the 4th might provide opportunities for families as well. Probably all of us locally would make those 4th of July opportunities optional. When you're the student athlete, they don't feel optional. So it's a piece. I understand the desire to, from a coaching standpoint, from a family standpoint.
I think there's been a couple of cases in which either a school or community has already had to adjust their summer contact because of the COVID. So either haven't gotten to start yet, or they've started and had to shut things down. And so then those are just 2 that I know about that.
Yeah, we started
that they are adjusting it already and losing some of the days on the front end. So
I honestly don't think from a competitive balance standpoint that it's going to matter that much. I really do. I want to make sure we're doing right by kids and families.
And I don't know where I'm exactly at either. Share both we have conflicts. I would like to consider July maybe different than the August, possibly. Maybe that would be a different vote. I don't know that it would be on my part, but it might be. I worry about the August. They certainly give an opportunity back to kids because they lost their spring sports, and so track, there's an opportunity to maybe do something for someone who did. But then when we get the request every year now for, well,
another 50.
Yeah, that was great to go to North Carolina and play golf. And we permanently moved this back, so we always have that opportunity now because of this. And we are trying to protect families. I'm sure there will be some maybe frustrated if there is a track meet in our own backyard, so to say. Not saying that there is. And then we said, well, South Dakota will participate. Host it, but not participate. There's some optics there also. But
I would probably vote. I would just vote. I would probably lean towards reducing the moratorium, because as a district, we still have the option. If we feel strongly that we need to close that down, we still have that option. So I don't think as a board, we're taking that opportunity away from the local decision. So I would probably err on that.
And as I said, I wouldn't be bringing it up or having the opinions I would if they wouldn't have lost the spring, even though the summer contact just started. I know some kids did virtual workouts, some did nothing, some maybe didn't have the means, and I think it's just an olive branch to reach out and give them an opportunity to do a little bit more because of what went down. Is there anybody with the motion? Otherwise, I might pass the gavel.
If we move to approve, we're going to reduce the moratorium.
Yeah, there's no dates, so you probably need to specify.
Yeah, you would need to specify any changes that you would move to.
I make a motion, but I haven't thought through the dates. Can you help me with
3, 4, 5 is what you want it to be.
I would make the motion that we would pass it as presented, with the dates being July 3, 4, and 5 for the moratorium.
Okay, then an extension to the end.
It would.
August 1st and 2nd.
That would be the dates, yeah. If you want to go there, if you wanted to go further.
That's the recommendation.
Just to clarify, the 1st and 2nd are Saturday, Sunday?
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to adjust the summer moratorium to the dates of July 3rd and 4th and the end of the summer contact period.
3rd, 4th, and 5th.
I'm sorry, did I say it wrong? 3rd, 4th, and 5th. 3rd, 4th, and 5th of July, and then to extend the summer contact at the end to include August 1st and 2nd. Perfect. Looking for a second. Second, Jerry. Further discussion.
When does volleyball and football start?
We would potentially have 2 sports in soccer and tennis.
Golf.
That would roll, golf's the week later. Soccer and tennis that would roll right from summer contact and cheer dance, summer contact right into practice.
That would start the 3rd, is that the first?
Yes, volleyball doesn't start until like
the following 13th Thursday, yeah.
Okay. So the student athletes do have some time except for cheer dance.
Just through the chat up here for you guys real quick. I see the notes from the audience there, a couple 3 listening, asking for the keeping it 1 to 7. Sorry, I just saw that. No, apologize.
Okay, any further discussion?
I would just echo what Brian said earlier, that certainly a district, that's there, they can extend if they want additional days, or to still follow, or if they have things planned.
This is Randy. I understand that the individual schools can make those decisions. It just puts more pressure on people when the school next year doesn't do it. And so we run into those issues, that's all.
I agree, Randy. I hesitated to say it because that's what we're elected to do, is make those tough decisions. So you're right. We need to make those tough decisions. And we do put schools in a bind when we say you don't have to follow this. You can be more restrictive. I guess that's always true.
And I can't imagine that I would ever feel the same way in a normal year.
Yeah.
That's my conflict. I totally agree with Randy.
from the, I would say the end of, to the middle of nowhere, because that's really not the case in my area, but I've always been I think one of the best things the organization did was put those moratoriums in. My son would absolutely disagree with me because he'd be in the gym 24/7 if he could. But I'm not saying we're trying to level the playing field, but it is a lot easier, and I want to pick on, not necessarily on Mark, but if I live in Aberdeen and the Y is open at that time, I can go in there and shoot hoops and do what I want. I live in Boston, we lock the doors of the gym and better hope it's nice outside if they're going to shoot baskets. So one thing that moratorium does, it does, I feel, help some of those rural communities that don't have that community resource.
And then to clarify, this would just be for this year, so everybody listening knows that. Any further discussion? Okay, well, it sounds like we have a lot of different views, so I'm gonna ask for a roll call on this one.
Okay, I'm just gonna go around the table here. Okay. Start on Zoom. Randy Silman.
No.
Dan Aker.
No.
Dr. Rasmussen.
Yes.
Dr. Maher.
Yes.
Craig Cassidy.
No.
Barry Mann.
Yes.
Mark Murphy.
No.
Sorry, David. David Plantine. Sorry.
I'm glad you saved him for last.
Yeah. Mo will be last.
Yes.
Mo Rusing.
Yes.
I've got 5 yes, 4 no.
Okay. Item number 19 has passed. Moving on to item number 20.
Hey, Dan, this is Randy again. Can we make sure you send out a memo for that to all the schools so they all know
Yes.
what the dates are, so everybody's on the same page? Thank you.
Yep, we'll do that today.
Moving on to item number 20, approval of resolution recognizing services rendered by Dr. Brian Maher, David Plantine, and Mo Rusing, who are completing their terms on the South Dakota High School Activity Association Board of Directors. Turn this over to Dr. Swartos.
Yeah, I'm just going to read this, and I'm going to throw all of their names in and read it one time. So, whereas Dr. Brian Maher, Sioux Falls Public Schools, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, David Plantine, Langford Area School District, Langford, South Dakota, and Mo Rusing, Sioux Valley High School, Volga, South Dakota, have served as members of the Board of Directors of the South Dakota High School Activities Association. And whereas they have at all times provided a high standard of conduct in their leadership roles, which enhance the image of the association. Whereas they have worked hard for the best interests and for the welfare of the association membership and the youth of its member schools, spending a great deal of extra time and effort. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Directors, individually and collectively, express deep and grateful appreciation to Dr. Brian Maher, Mo Rusing, and David Plantine for their unselfish dedication and service to the South Dakota High School Activities Association. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors extends to Dr. Maher, David Plantine, and Mo Rusing sincere wishes for the continued good health, prosperity, and success, and that the Board shall ever be grateful for their personal friendship.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I would like the honor of making the motion to approve that resolution.
Motion by Greg, that's your second.
Might die for lack of a second.
Second by Dan.
Hey, this is Randy. I'd like a roll call vote on this.
All right, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to item 21. excuse me, item 21. Election of South Dakota High School Activity Association chairperson and vice chairperson for 2020-2021.
Yeah, okay. So I would first take nominations for the position of SDHSAA chairperson for 2020-2021.
This is Randy. I'd like to make a motion to approve Craig Casson as the chair for the 2021 school year.
Okay.
Nominate.
To nominate.
Sorry, nominate.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Randy Soma as vice chair.
Let's do the president.
Let's do the president first.
Oh, first, okay.
Okay. So, hearing no other nominations for the chair, there's a motion by Randy Soma to nominate Craig Cassens as the chairperson. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dr. Maher with gusto. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Now I would open up nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Randy Soma as vice chair. I'll second that.
Okay, are there any other nominations for the vice chairperson? Hearing none, there's been a motion by Mark Murphy, seconded by Craig Cassens, to nominate Randy Soma as the vice chairperson for the 2020-21 school year. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Craig Cassens will be our chairperson. Randy Soma will be our vice chairperson.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Mo Rusick for his work as chair this year. It's been a crazy year, to say the least, and he's handled it very well. And I want to thank him for that. And before we forget, thank David and Brian for their service to the board as well. And more importantly, to their service to the kids in our state and the schools in our state, and for their leadership.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 22, approve board policy manual for 2021. Is there a motion to approve first?
So moved, Baker.
Motion by Dan.
Second by Soma.
Second by Soma.
Second by Randy. Dr. Schwartz, do you have some stuff on this?
Yeah, essentially, on page 1 there, just the clothing allowance down at the bottom. Page 2, we made changes to the dates only. Skipping ahead to page 4, those items in green, those will be updated with the correct dates and locations and hotels as we go on here. In terms of the substance of the policy manual, the only change that we are recommending right now is find it here. Would be on page 15 and page 10. What? No. Keep going.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's in green just because we need to update that with our insurance changes once those happen. Page 15 and page, they both say the same thing. One is just on the executive manual and one is on the administrative assistant. Page 15 and 24, it's the same thing. In terms of the parental leave, just clarifying on there that sick leave and vacation leave continue to accrue at regular rates while an employee is on approved parental leave. That is part of FMLA. We're just spelling it out here, clarifying it on there. So there are a few additional changes that we're going to be looking at. We might look at a few extra things here in August and this fall. in terms of the policy manual right now to get started with our July 1st year. That's the only changes that we are recommending.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Item number 22.5. Consider change to 2020 state competitive dance championship routines. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Randy.
Second.
Second by David. Dr. Sordos or?
Yeah.
So explain.
We had a meeting with cheer dance coaches and some of their ADs, when was it, last week? Week and a half ago?
Yeah.
And during that, it was suggested that for next year's competitive dance championship, because of lost choreography time and some of the logistical challenges that we could have in terms of clothing changes, things like that, that for next year to drop the routine number from 3 to 2.
In dance only.
In dance only.
Yeah. This was, just to clarify, this was something that after we had met at our special board meeting, I got on a Zoom call and asked any of our cheer and dance coaches, athletic directors, if they wanted to be a part of that call. They had any questions about the summer contacts phases, because I had been getting several calls about what they could and couldn't do with choreography and things of that nature. During that call was when this suggestion came about. An AD presented that. All the ADs, or a lot of the ADs that were on that call at that point in time, said yes, they liked that idea, concerned about locker rooms, facilities, choreography, the time in which they had to contact choreographers and all of those kinds of things. Keep in mind, not everyone was on that call. Okay, so I was asked to do a survey of the schools. There are 28 dance schools. I did hear from every school. That vote ended up being, I believe it was 23 to 5. I had 13 to 5 in AA and 10-0 in Class A. Every school did respond. Since that time, since I sent out what the vote was and told them that, here's where we were at, I would get board approval, I've heard from one coach concerned about, the fact that they're missing out on an opportunity. If a kid has the opportunity, if a kid's in hip hop, for example, and now I choose pom and jazz, that kid may not be able to participate. I think the bigger issue probably coming from the AD side of things is this isn't a comparison to volleyball and basketball and things of that nature, because we don't go in after each set or each quarter to a locker room, change our costumes after we're doing all of those kinds of things. So I think for this year, I think this is probably a good change, just to make sure that we can at least have some type of semblance of what cheer and dance will look like, and hopefully get to a state tournament along the way. I understand some of the concerns, but like I said, I was pleased that we only had one coach that had contacted me with that concern. Not to say that there aren't others out there that probably have some of those concerns, but once they found out that the same judges would be judging the same routines and things of that nature, some of the concerns we had before, I think they were on board with that. So I'll just leave it at that.
So Joe, when I read this, I look at 23 to 5, and I think, well, that's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, sometimes I don't give a topic like this the time and energy that I should, because I don't understand it. Mm-hmm. I might understand football or basketball or something like that. 23 to 5 is the ADs. Did that information get to the coaches?
Yes, I asked them to discuss that with their coaches and provide me with a school vote. So yeah. I assumed that happened.
Well, they either did or they didn't. Correct. They had that.
They had the opportunity. Yes.
Yeah. And it seems, when I look at it on the surface, it seems really very reasonable. Given where we are, and we don't know what's going to be like this year. It might be just fine. But the only coronavirus piece of this, coronavirus-related piece of this currently, it's not because we're worried coronavirus will be here during competition season. We can't get prepared for that season, so we need to reduce choreography.
That was
just to prepare for the season.
That was the concern, is that choreographers, normally I could plan to have my choreographer come in July 2nd or June 2nd. I couldn't do that if they're on an airplane coming from a long distance away because I didn't know what the summer contact stuff was going to be. So choreography has been kind of pushed back as to what they can and can't do. So I think that was a consideration as well.
And obviously the process usually doesn't look like this, but again, given things that have happened, my personal feeling is something that we should consider, but it's not the normal process of,
right. I have concerns with it because, I think we're taking something away from the dance world.
Yeah.
And that bothers me a little bit because I don't know that we would do that with, I don't think we'd cut a quarter short of football or a quarter short of basketball or things of that nature.
That's where my mind went.
Yeah,
exactly
I struggle with that part too. But I think if the schools are telling us that this is what we need to do right now, I think we need to maybe respect that. And it was pretty overwhelming that the schools that are probably running these events feel that way.
And clarification, this would be for
this year,
fall only.
Yeah, and that was something they were very adamant about. They don't want this to bleed into the next decision. They don't want this to be a step to say, well, let's go down to 2 because we did it this year.
Yeah.
So, and keep in mind, this did not go through advisory. Mm-hmm. So I want to be clear about that.
But everybody on advisory was part of it.
Correct.
The group that had an opportunity to weigh in the 23 to 5.
Yep, correct. Every school did both. Dan asked me that this morning, and so I was pleased. I stayed on them because I knew this was going to be an interesting topic. So I got a response from them.
And that's the part I wanted to clarify. Wasn't part of the normal process because of the coronavirus. That usually we won't have decisions or different things with sports or fine arts that don't come and follow the timeline procedure that they should. So it's unique. I have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Item 23, board sharing. At this time, we go around those that wish to share some things publicly with the other board members or with the schools or public, have a chance to do so. Anybody would like to start?
I guess I just want to.
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I just want to first off thank Isaac for all the great work he's done and appreciate everything he's done for us and all the schools as well as the staff. And then Dr. Maher, Dave, and Mo, can't thank you guys enough for your leadership over the last 5 years. Everything you've done for the students of the state as well as the school districts. Your professionalism, the way you handled all your decision makings, and just want to thank you for the leadership you've given us and mentoring you've given us, so that we can, hopefully carry that torch on like you guys have given us. So we appreciate everything you've done for us, and look forward to seeing you in the future.
David?
Randy just did kind of basically I want to thank Isaac for excellent work. I mean, where we came from when we first came on board for the financials, it's just like night and day. And to get a clean audit, just and good luck in your future. Thank you. That's all I had.
I'll reiterate what Randy said. Mo and David and Dr. Maher, thank you on behalf of the athletes and school districts of this state for the service you've given to this committee and this board. And thank you, Isaac, for figuring all the scratching things I've done on my statement sheet over the years. So thank you.
maybe didn't know, I believe all three of you served full 5-year terms.
Full 5-year terms, yep.
And had a lot of change on the board, and I know that happened, but through all the different things that have happened in the last 5 years, the stabilizing force also by being able to continue and serve your full 5 years. So I think it's important to note that you gave continuity. That's much appreciated.
I just think that I said, I really enjoyed 1 year I got to work with you guys, get to know you a little bit. Everybody we should learn a lot from you three. And, best of luck on here. Your next step, wherever you want to go out there, and you guys keep fighting at your local districts like you already do. Appreciate the time. Get to work with you this year. Really enjoyed it. And Isaac, best of luck.
Good luck to all the outgoing board members. Also, I'm glad we're back in person, so I'm tired of Zoom.
A couple years back when I threw my name in the hat in that election, and some people have said I was pretty much crazy to want to try something like that. But it has been very rewarding. I'm not leaving, but these gentlemen here are. We're losing Isaac. But honestly, I was a little bit concerned, thinking, boy, do I need this more on my plate? What's it be like? But with having these people sit here and what Isaac's done, and I also want to add to it with Brooks and John, Joe, and Dan, I can't say enough about these 4 people because there's very few organizations at this level that you have a cell number and you call that cell number at night or on the weekend and they pick up, and if they don't, they call you back. And that goes a long ways. Makes me very proud to be in South Dakota and part of this organization.
Thank you, everybody. I talked earlier, and just my appreciation for being able to serve on the board runs deep, and the staff, all you've done, it makes our jobs easier, whether you think it does or not. So we appreciate all the work you guys do behind the scenes. I mentioned that earlier. We're all in positions where a lot of people think they know what we do, and in reality, they maybe don't really know exactly what we do. So we have hard decisions to make and hard conversations to have with people sometimes, and we do them professionally, and we're efficient and transparent, and really doing the best for the kids and the member schools. So thank you, Isaac, and good luck to you. Thank you for all you've done, and I appreciate serving with everybody, but you two as well going off, so thank you.
Well, first of all, to Isaac, thank you. Dave really summed that up well. The whole department has changed drastically in our 5 years on the board. We also hired Dan Spartos. That has proven to be a good thing, at least up till now. Really, really well done. And the staff here is tremendous and extremely understaffed. We get a lot done for no more people than we have working in this office as a state. I don't know how we could be more efficient as an organization than we are. And then in my first year in South Dakota, I was appointed to this board, or elected to this board, and appointed to the Blue Ribbon Task Force. 2 tremendous things for me to learn about the state, because I was just a small town Nebraska kid, but I was moving to Sioux Falls, so you get this kind of the big city effect when people think of you, but I'm still a small town kid, so it was very fun to learn the geography, learn where the towns were, learn where the mascots are, and just to become part of the state. So I appreciate the friendships, I appreciate the service. I think this board and this organization is in really good shape moving forward. It was a privilege to be a part of it.
All right. That's it for board sharing.
We don't have
We'll move into item number 24, executive session pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2.4. Is there a motion to enter an executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Craig. For a second?
Second.
Second by Barry. We are in executive session.
I got a question, Mo. How are you guys going to keep me online here? Do you want me to hang up and figure out something else, or are you guys going to send me another invite?
Randy, I will send you a separate Zoom invite here in about 2 seconds. So it'll just plug you right back in here on this one. So we'll kick everybody out of the current Zoom and just bring you back into the private one differently, okay?
Sounds good, thanks.
Yep.
Leave the other
So I'm just going to leave the current meeting and we'll go from there. Yep.
That's right there at our school. Okay.
So you were not close to the edge.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
This may sound like a typical high school basketball game being played on a Friday night in South Dakota. In fact, it's a crash course in cooperation and teamwork. It's a test of dedication, determination, and drive. It's character development in action. If you think high school sports are only about competition, think about this. High school sports can play a critical role in a student's overall education. In fact, studies show that students who participate in school sports are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in their academic lives. At the same time, playing sports helps teach lessons not covered in the classroom. Lessons like tolerance, respect for the rules, and the importance of supporting your community. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. There's just one place where students are students first, and athletics are played with purpose and perspective. That place is your local high school. High school sports offer more than the joy of competition. Studies show that student athletes in South Dakota are also likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in other areas of their lives, including academics. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in South Dakota. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the South Dakota High School Activities Association and the South Dakota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
The South Dakota High School Activities Association Board of Directors meeting is currently in recess or executive session. Please stand by for continued live audio coverage.
These days, the concept of value matters more than ever. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a better value than high school sports. extracurricular activities, including sports,